Delbert,
Yeah.
thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Man, it's good to be here.
Yeah, I've met you not too long ago. It wasn't a couple of days ago, but
Yeah.
just a little while ago.
Yeah.
Again, it's a pretty hot day.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming in here without an AC. And definitely looking forward to hearing your story. Well, we've had a bit of a chat the first time we met at Dogma.
Mm-hmm.
And you've told me a couple of things. And I don't know if you want to repeat yourself or not, just for the sake of the listeners hearing what you have to say.
Sure.
Just tell people a bit, like what you do, how you ended up here, where you're from as well, because it's a bit relevant as well.
Well, Well, I'm from Oklahoma in the United States of America.
Yeah.
I come from a little farming community called Crescent. And, I was raised on a farm, actually. But anyway, I don't even know where to start. I mean, how did I end up here?
Yeah.
It was a colleague of mine came to America to visit a church that I was an associate pastor at, and he invited me to come, and I came and visited in 2007, and I liked it, and but there was a process. I started visiting then, and I was actually planning to come in 2010, but my son was killed at the end of 2009.
Oh, yeah, that's horrible.
And
I remember you mentioning that, but that is awful.
Yeah. No parent should have to go through that.
Nah, really, that is probably the worst thing you can go through. So it's definitely a life experience.
Yeah,
that nobody should experience.
He was 23 years old, and
way too young.
Yeah, another young man, his friend, actually pointed the gun at his head and pulled the trigger. But
that is insane.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you want to go into details about that, but we can do it a bit later as well, if however it's more comfortable for you.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll come back to that. Maybe I need to start from the beginning.
Sure, but before you start, I never really asked how I should address you. Should I address you as father because you are a pastor at the end of the day?
No.
Or just go with Delbert?
No, just Delbert.
Just Delbert. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. We're not. I'm just a follower of Jesus and a believer in Jesus. I'm not really what you would call religious.
Yeah.
And I say that I religiously follow Jesus and his teachings. But my faith is not based in my performances of doing religious acts. My faith is based upon what Jesus did at the cross. Okay. That's my only righteousness is in him. I'm still a man. I still have problems. I still have weaknesses. But the blood of Jesus cleanses me and forgives me of those sins so that I can have fellowship with Father God. And so that's my belief and that's my faith. And
I remember you telling me the story, how you came across Jesus, how you felt his presence at one point. So you've had one of those life experiences that...
I had a burning bush, dude.
You had a burning bush, right?
Burning bush.
Proper spiritual experience.
Yeah, I had an encounter that really... changed my life totally. So to start from the beginning, coming up on a farm,
just before you go there, do you want to grab a soda? Just because make sure you don't get overheated.
I'm fine. I'm fine.
I'll grab one of these just because.
Go ahead. Yeah.
It's just so very hot.
Yeah. So we can. Yeah. Yeah. So coming up on a farm, just good old boys.
Yeah.
There's a term that we use, hillbillies. I was a proper hillbilly. It's the way I was raised. Bluegrass music. My folks were all musical. My granddad played the fiddle.
That's awesome.
My father blew the harmonica, and my brother learned the guitar. And from there, my brother closest to my age, a little bit older, he was the drummer, and so I was always the fill-in drummer. Okay. But so anyway, we would get together on the weekends and drink and butcher a pig or a goat and just have a proper barbecue
party.
and music and partying. And
Yeah.
so anyway, I was just used to that lifestyle. It wasn't a bad lifestyle. It was good, actually.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun.
Plus, you were with family.
Yes, yes. We were a very close family. I had I had 7 cousins from my dad's brother,
Wow.
my uncle, and so we just had, and then we had 6 in our family, so we just would always get together on the weekends, and that's where the party would start, and of course friends would come, and so by the time the night was over, there's anywhere from 20 to 30 people at the farm partying,
Insane.
drinking.
Yeah. It's pretty much the way we imagine American parties.
Yeah,
being,
yeah. But it was actually kind of nice somehow. We were very clannish, very close, very loving, very affectionate. But and I always knew I was loved. That's the thing. I had a good father, and he had a lot of morals and ethics in his life. And I always felt secure. He's a World War II vet, fought in Okinawa.
Wow.
And, he was just a good man, hardworking, always paid his bills on time, honest to a fault. If he didn't like you, he'd tell you.
Hands down.
Just that kind of guy.
Down, yeah.
But anyway, but in that atmosphere, I tasted alcohol by the time I was 5 and had my first sexual encounter even by that age. Just
by 5?
Yeah.
Was it voluntary? It's a weird question to ask, I guess, but because at 5, you can't.
Well, curiosity,
I suppose,
and I don't know. Actually, there was a couple of times that borderline molestation by other women, actually.
Which is one of those cases where I know I should react in one of those ways where, oh, that's so disgusting, but it's always when it's an older woman and a younger boy. Okay, 5 is a bit of an exaggeration.
Well, it was actually maybe teenage age, not that much older.
Yeah, and guys always go like, hey, it's not too bad.
Exploring and that sort of thing.
If it was the other way around, it would have been a bit creepy. But yourself being a boy, teenage kid.
But there was a lot of
not too bad.
There was a lot of base humor in our family.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know what I mean by base humor. Always making fun of the situation, the anatomy or bodies.
Okay.
You have a big backside, or you look good tonight, or whatever. Those sort of base humor things and speech and a lot of.
I'm familiar myself, or the listeners as well.
So
trying to imagine it.
So anyway,
this was lifestyle.
Just I guess I was aware of that lifestyle and sexuality and alcohol but it just led into a deeper addiction later on in life for me. That's kind of what I'm trying to make a foundation for, to understand that led into harder drugs later on.
Oh yeah,
and pornography and all those sort of things,
Yeah, and here I am just saying like how cool your lifestyle was as a kid.
That openness led into things that sort of affected me in a negative way. Put it that way.
I understand. Yeah, I mean, you did mention drugs and
So I started sniffing pain at 9. Just
Wow.
And they say that can ruin your brain cells. So it's really kind of.
I wouldn't know, but what do you get from it though?
Well, you get a high if you sniff too much, then you can pass out. I did a couple of times, but anyway, that led to marijuana. And at 13, I was busted for growing marijuana.
You were growing?
Well, we had some plants
Biologists.
in an egg carton. We were starting some seeds, and so we got busted that night. Anyway, my dad was not happy about that, coming to get me out of jail. But
I can imagine. Isn't it legal today, though?
It's legal today, but back then it was not.
Yeah.
But it was, one of those
I don't think
stories.
you get busted for, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it definitely makes for a story, right?
Yeah. I mean, a few years back that would make more sense that headed toward the illegal side of things,
Yeah.
And just walking into those areas.
I suppose that's why they call marijuana as being a gateway drug.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Just
yeah.
as something you start off with.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
because the
It
bad
can lead
thing
to
is
others.
it's in the same category as drugs in general.
Yeah.
Like I think in Romania it's in the same category as heroin or all the other heavy stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's probably why they call it a gateway drug, even though it's not exactly a drug. I guess it's a plant.
Yeah. I think, I think if you're smoking marijuana, you're exploring anyway.
Yeah.
And so anything can become a gateway. For me, the alcohol was the gateway
Okay.
to everything else that I ended up doing.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, that's a drug as well. We just
Yeah.
don't call it one because it's legal and everybody's kind of doing
Exactly.
it. So because
Exactly.
everybody's drinking it, we just accepted it as being a normal thing.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not going to deny it. I usually have alcohol as well. And even on the podcast, we'd
Yeah.
have wine. But I guess wine is a bit less heavy than, going for shots every night and just partying until you pass out.
Well, and even in a lot of religious circles, there's the acceptance of it, and there's also the communion, that can be served with wine. I prefer grape juice, but
Okay.
yeah, but a lot of churches and a lot of different religions use wine for communion. So,
Well, wine is a form of grape juice, right?
yeah, exactly. It is. Yeah,
Going through a bit of a process.
yeah,
there.
yeah.
So you had that going on. So you had alcohol. You got into marijuana as well.
Yeah, and I, by the time I was 16, though, it was every day. It was every day drinking, smoking, taking drugs. Got stepped up to starting taking Quaaludes and
Oh yeah,
and
different
speed,
generation.
and so there. But yeah, just every day was like sometimes all of it all at once. But I don't remember a day that I was sober. Let me put it that way.
Wow, that is deep.
And so that just went forward. I went into the oil field. I quit school at 16 and went into the oil field.
Okay.
And so even there, got connected with people that did drugs and drank and that sort of thing, and doing drugs even on a drilling rig.
Wow, the entourage doesn't help in that situation, right? You need to surround yourself with decent people.
Yeah, and roughnecks are a different breed of people in the oil field. We were called roughnecks, and so we were a different breed of people altogether. But
well, not much to do out in the desert, right? Especially if you're working on an oil field rig.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm trying to imagine because I was born in not in the 90s. I was born in 1990, and this was Eastern Europe, so I ended up mostly growing up on American 70s, 80s movies.
Yeah.
So I kind of get an idea of how it was depicted.
Yeah.
Plus, then later on, you get into video games. There's Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
You've probably heard of these as well. The last one, I think it was GTA 5. That's played like in California, or a mirror image of California. More or less, and it's the desert. It's not Oklahoma, so I get Oklahoma's a bit more different. I've been there myself, and I know that, it's a bit flat, not much to do.
Farmland,
a lot of farmland.
Yeah.
So
and it's also part of Indian country.
Yeah,
so
true.
You have a lot of Native Americans there. Actually, I have Native American blood as well. My great grandfather was full blood. I think he was Cherokee or Choctaw. I think it was Choctaw.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How is it? Like, this is a different topic, so obviously I don't want to veer off from your story, but I'll probably ask about what it's like in Oklahoma still with the Native Americans. Is the relationship okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of Native Americans were put on reservations, and so we have the Dakotas, North and South Dakota. There's reservations there, and you have them in Arizona. Utah, not so much Oklahoma anymore.
Okay,
but you still have a lot of casinos, and you do in Watonga. You have different areas where there's a lot of Indian population, not so much a reservation.
Just so listeners they understand. This in the U.S., you can only open a casino if you're a Native American, right? Or in a Native American reservation. Is it like that?
Yeah. Well,
Pretty much that's why they are in Nevada as well.
Exactly.
And in Vegas.
Exactly.
And there are a bunch of others out there, but it's always operated by Indians.
Yeah.
Because they're the only ones that are allowed to operate them.
Yeah.
So it's just for a bit of context.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's happened in Oklahoma as well. I wasn't aware though. So as I was driving through Tulsa, I wasn't familiar with Tulsa whatsoever before actually getting there. I think the only time I've ever heard about it was in Friends, you know, the TV show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they didn't advertise it all too well.
Yeah.
It was Chandler, I think, that got a job in Tulsa, and everyone was pissed.
Yeah.
Oh God, we're moving to Tulsa. You know, and he was always like the funny guy. And well, it's a nice place, to be honest. And I've spent a couple of nights there, had beer with a friend that I met in Hawaii that I mentioned earlier, as well. And he even visited us here.
Yeah.
So he was a fun guy as well.
That's the thing with Oklahoma, though, is that you have a lot of history of cowboys and Indians. And so you have all that rodeo stuff, and you have cowboys. And
you got the proper accent as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm lucky. So far, my experience with Oklahomans has been positive.
Yeah. Man, Oklahomans are good people.
Yeah.
They're down to earth. They're the kind of people that if you come to a four-way stop, they'll wave you on. Come on, go ahead. You know.
Yeah, fun people.
Very courteous people.
But it's a dangerous place as well in terms of tornadoes, right? There's always tornado season as well. It's on Tornado Alley, I think it's called.
Tornado Alley.
And I think when we were there, they had a tornado alert just a day earlier. So what do you do when you get that? Or how often do you get them there?
Every year about this time.
Okay. So
every year about this time, there's the potential for them.
Wow. And I think we had some shaping here as well a couple of days ago, or was it yesterday, I think? Well, not tornadoes, they're not full blown, but you get the cone.
Yeah.
I don't think they've touched down, but people have snap photos now that everybody's got a camera in their pocket, on their phone that'll get shots of it. Yeah. I don't know if we've had them before as well, but like tornadoes have always been like an American thing. And it was either somewhere central Midwest US or the Caribbean, right? Just moving towards Florida. That's always like a yearly thing.
I remember when we first came here in 2015, there was an actual tornado near Bucharest, I think it was.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
And so I was like, man, I brought the tornadoes with me.
Yeah, right. You're coming over to Romania bringing the tornadoes.
Yeah, but
fun stuff. Yeah, sorry, I think I veered off from your story, but it's interesting as well. Just this type of stuff to talk about as well. Have you ever had, like, just before we get back to your story, like, have you had bad experiences with tornadoes? Like, have you?
We've been close to them. Yeah,
you've been close to them, just because it's pure luck, right? And like, if it hits your house, then boom, it's gone.
Most everybody in Oklahoma has a storm shelter. They have something in their basement, or they have a cellar outside, so that you can go and get underground. And because anything on the ground is subject to being twisted off and blown away,
just ripped off.
Yeah. It takes bricks and blocks. It tears down everything.
Yeah, when you get down a rabbit hole on YouTube, then you end up seeing some of these insane videos. Like, it just rips everything apart.
Yeah.
But even though, like, I try to imagine what it would be like if the houses were also made of bricks the way they are here. In Europe in general, because all the houses are built out of bricks, so houses are a bit more heavy, I guess, and the foundation's a bit deeper. But I know that it's in the States, and I've been on a couple of construction sites as well, just to see what real estate's like there. And it's all just wooden frame and just pretty much what's it called? It's not cardboard, fake drywall. There we go. So wooden frame and drywall. Yeah, mostly. So, knowing that, I'm not surprised that a tornado would just pick it up and just blow it all away. But I don't know if it would.
But it'll take brick too.
Probably, yeah. I mean, depends on how strong the tornado is, right?
Yeah, yeah. An F5 will tear things up.
Yeah, probably anything that's in its way. So anybody that doesn't know, like, they're categorized from 1 till 5. 5 being like the heaviest,
the strongest. Yeah.
Yeah, you can Google it, like how the wind speeds are at 5, but it's insane, and you don't want to see it.
No. I've been within a mile of one, and they are scary. They are scary.
Yeah, and there's this thing, if it's not moving, if the tornado is not moving, that it means it's coming towards you. Yeah, right. That's a creepy thought. Yeah. And it's always dark, right?
Yeah.
Again,
very dark. Yeah.
It's a cool rabbit hole to go down on when you're in the evening, just in front of your computer or on your phone, and you start going to this stuff. You can try to imagine.
They had a movie. They made a movie about tornadoes.
Just one, because there's quite a few out there.
I can't remember I can't remember who starred in it.
It's not Sharknado, right?
No. Yeah, that's a different one.
Yeah.
But there's been some floating cattle, in those tornadoes. They get picked up.
Wow.
But yeah.
It's funny in a weird way, but you don't want your cattle to be flying 100 yards above ground.
No.
So yeah, sorry, we veered off really into the tornado
It's funny
stuff.
though, yeah.
But yeah, so this is where you grew up. This is Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Farm life, pretty much. And
yes, and then getting into the drugs and alcohol. Being from a musical family, I always had bands I was playing with, and so. But then about 19, I got into a heavy metal band, and I was playing drums, so we were really into Ozzy Osbourne, Motley Crue, Iron Maiden, those heavy metal bands during that period. And
controversial back then, right?
Yeah. Still kind of is. And actually, we were right on the forefront of it and sort of introduced it to the little town that we lived in.
Wow.
And we have a community center, in the little farming community of Crescent, and we got invited to showcase our talents, to play like a couple of songs, because they always they bring in the country and western bands, and they always, it's just a little community showing of who's in town or whatever and who has talent. So we put on our leathers and spikes,
and you brought Ozzy Osbourne.
And we actually played Helter Skelter, but Motley Crue style. And
there we go.
And it was so funny because the little old lady on the front row holding her ears, with her hands. And so we kind of introduced that, and it was, but everybody was buzzing after we got done. They were like, they'd never seen anything like that before. So anyway, it was crazy.
You didn't get a bat though, right?
Huh?
You didn't get a bat.
No. We didn't get a bat to bite its head off or anything like that. But I was crazy enough to, though, if somebody would have thrown one. But
the first time you mentioned the story, your story, I was like, I can imagine you doing that.
Yeah.
So these sound like fun memories, by the way. Aside from the drugs.
Yeah. It was fun. Sin's always fun.
Well, yeah, I guess. Yeah,
well,
you can definitely put it that way.
Yeah. But there's consequences.
Yeah, there's always
consequences.
Yeah, definitely. But you could have went into, this was fate, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
You could call it fate that brought you into this entourage. You could have gotten into a Christian rock band at that point, right?
Yeah. Well, I never really. I had a brother that was had given his life to the Lord, and he was praying for me. And he's second to the oldest. There were 6 of us, and he was second to the oldest. And but he kind of moved away from us and got away out of the lifestyle. And so I wasn't really familiar. He had preached to me a couple of times, but still I had no really upbringing about Christianity or church or anything like that. My mom was in and out of church, but I remember seeing her read her Bible, but I never went to church. And so I had really no education about Bibles or Christianity. And
what about any of the other faiths? Or in Oklahoma, it was mostly just Christianity, right? You were surrounded by
Baptist, Church of Christ, Christianity. There was Catholic churches as well.
It was mostly just Christianity, right?
Yeah.
Especially back then.
Yeah, back then, for sure.
Because now it probably changed a bit, but...
Yeah. But so getting into the heavy metal, there's just this underlying tone of occultism. And so it is in heavy metal, it is alcohol, drugs, rock and roll, and sex in the demonic realm. It's just there. That's why. But what drew me to it was the theatrics of it. I liked it that they would have these huge monolithic type sets, with like Iron Maiden had this one demon-looking thing that would walk around and just,
I remember that.
And it's so dramatic, and the drum beat was just so heavy, and you just really get into it, and I enjoyed that sort of thing. But see, I was raised on country and western and bluegrass, And so it's almost like I was becoming the black sheep of the family. My family was like, dude, you're really into this stuff. And so anyway, we were good, and I was planning actually to go to California was the next point to see if we could make it big.
Yeah,
you
just
know,
to expand the project a bit, right?
But then that's when I had my encounter. Okay. And before that, though, the drugs and the alcohol had gotten so bad every day. I don't remember a sober day, but at 20 years old, I shot up crystal meth for the first time.
Ouch.
And I was instantly hooked. I mean, you go from one state of being to another where it's euphoric and you feel like you can do anything, and you have the energy to do it, and your mind is spinning and you can think things, and it's almost like ADHD on steroids, but you're sort of hyper-focused and you can talk, you know, and you're up for 2 days.
Wow.
And
that is almost saying I'm not familiar with it myself. Like, I don't think we really have it around here. Crystal meth, it's really a thing. Most of us are familiar with it because of Breaking Bad, the show.
Yeah.
But, you know, other than that, and they've portrayed it in a fairly good way, I guess. So they've done good marketing for it. Yeah. And we don't want to try it because at the same time they portray it, the whole, you know, teeth falling out type of deal as well.
It's bad for you because I had people telling me I was skinny, I was white as a ghost, and just
definitely bad for you overall.
Yeah, people were trying to tell me, dude, you look unhealthy, and I'm like, I feel good. I'm healthy. I can do anything. You know, that's kind of what it makes you feel like you can do, but it's false. Yeah. Anyway, we would do the drugs. I would shoot up so that we could practice all night, you know, and I would drink whiskey just because I could, because I wouldn't get drunk. You know, just because I like the taste of whiskey, and I would just drink it straight out of the bottle. And I remember my lead guitar player, he wasn't a drinker. He liked the drugs, though. He did the crystal meth. And
was he judging you because you were doing drugs?
I would drink the whiskey.
Oh, sorry,
he would judge me for the whiskey,
whilst he was doing the drugs.
While he was doing the crystal. Man, why do you do this? Because I can.
Yeah.
I want to.
Well, if you're already doing the drugs, then, you know,
yeah,
if you're including alcohol in there.
It didn't have any effect, though, because of the crystal. The crystal... It makes the alcohol null and void or anything else that you're doing.
Well, I'm genuinely curious about the chemical explanation behind that.
I don't know.
I'll look into it at some point.
I
haven't heard about that, but cocaine's got that thing going on as well, I think.
Cocaine doesn't last as long. You have to do a lot of cocaine. And so that's why I chose the crystal meth, is because you could do a shot and you're up for 2 days. You're high for 2 days. And so that's, anyway, praise God, I'm off of that stuff. Yeah. So that led into some occultic activities. I remember we had a seance. Actually, my lead guitarist's girlfriend, she had a book on demonology. And so she was reading that. And at one point, she suggested that we have a seance to invite Randy Rhoads, the dead lead guitarist of Ozzy Osbourne, into our lead guitars.
Sheesh.
And
sounds like the plot for a good movie.
We actually did that. Wow. And I was just I'm searching for the word. I was very gullible, you know. And I thought, this is nothing. But so anyway, we did that, and but one thing led to another. She would provide the drugs for us, and she would go away. And she would come back and she would tell us these stories of what would happen when she would go to get the drugs with the guy that supplied the drugs. And his name was Snuffy. He got that name from killing people in prison. But he was going to the West Coast in California, and he would bring it back to Oklahoma, and that's how he was making his money. So anyway, she would tell us these stories of them having these weird parties and causing things to levitate with their minds, and causing chains to stretch out and be stiff with their thinking and minds. And then it evolved from that. And finally she came and she said, you know, that we drank blood out of a chalice. And she would only give us just little tidbits of information about what she was doing. Yeah. And
insane. And was this human blood, or was it just like goat's blood or something?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Wow. I don't know that. I never learned that. Because I never took part of it. I never saw it. Just only what she told me.
Okay.
And so, but there was one time that we were waiting for her to come back with the drugs, and she showed up, and dude, this probably will sound insane, but she smelled like death. You can actually, sometimes you can smell demons. And I've gotten used to that down through the years because I've had those experiences. When you come into the kingdom of God and you start understanding spiritual realms, and then you start having discernment of spirits, you can discern whether it's an evil spirit or whether it's a spirit, a Holy Spirit, or an angel from God. And so anyway, she smelled like death. It was crazy that night.
Wow.
And so she said, hey, you've been chosen to do this drug. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what that means, but I'm game. I'm down for it. Let's do it.
Yeah, well,
so,
you were already young.
And so, she had it in this vial, and she opened it up. And usually on the streets, when you get crystal, it's stepped on. We call it stepped on. It's something's added to it in order to make it go further so that it can make more money. And you have to put it in a spoon and heat it up and drop a cotton down in there and then suck the drug through the needle, through that cotton to just drain out any of the bad stuff that may be in it. So.
Yeah, so you got a method to filter it.
Yes, to filter it. That's good. Yeah. That's a good word, filter it. So anyway, she just opened the vial and she said, you don't have to melt it. It'll melt on its own. And so she filled the syringe up and she said, I have to warn you. She said, people that have done this drug either choose one way or the other. And I didn't understand what she was saying. And I said, okay, well, that's cool. And so anyway, I pulled the needle out of my arm, and I immediately saw into the spirit realm, and there were demons all around me. They were just everywhere. They were flying around me. I was batting at them, and they were trying to possess me. And you could say, well, maybe you were hallucinating, but the people I were with were seeing the same things.
Same things?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a lady I was with at the time, and she was seeing the same things.
Wow. So it wasn't like a weird panic attack? Or?
No. And if it was hallucination, it was a mass hallucination because there's three of us there seeing the same things. And
it wasn't like somebody started and the other people started seeing the same thing because somebody said that they're seeing them.
Well, we were all sort of ducking and jumping around at these things. And it's, if you can see into the spirit realm, it's almost like the Matrix. There's these little balls of light that are everywhere,
right?
And these little bugs and entities that are crawling around. And I guarantee you, if I had those eyes now, you could see them here. They're everywhere. And
that is insane, though.
It was crazy. Yeah, it felt like it. When I look back to it, it looked like the scene out of the Matrix. Whenever you could see the Matrix, and the little lights and the bugs and the things going everywhere.
Yeah.
And so they would come by in streaks and they would fly by me. And I would duck, and so the lady that was with me, she would do the same thing. And we were reading each other's minds. That was the crazy thing.
And how sure are you that these were demons and not something else? Like, just you're seeing behind, I don't know, the curtain of reality and
because I was scared.
You were scared, I guess. They scared
you. And it felt benevolent, or not non-benevolent. It felt threatening. That's a good word. Yeah, it felt like that, and
wow.
We went through this for 3 days. It's like we opened up something.
Wow.
And so, man, it was crazy. I remember at one point, if I would go to sleep, I would feel like something hit me in the back of the head, but it wasn't physical; it was spiritual.
Okay.
And it felt like my soul was trying to leave my body. Like it was trying to knock my soul out. And I knew that this demon was trying to possess me, and he's trying to beat his way in and take over. Yeah. And it was crazy, and I was freaked out for 3 days. 3 days I went through this.
Wow.
Reading minds, seeing things, just crazy.
It's a good thing that you went through this experience, right?
Yeah. So that led to...
Because otherwise you wouldn't have... Yeah. You wouldn't be able to tell the story, right?
Exactly.
So you had to go through this.
I figured it out we just did some deductive reasoning, and it come to find out this was a coven that she was going to get the drugs from, and they were trying to recruit us. Oh. And she had, at one point, I remember her telling me that if I wanted, she could get me all the drugs that I wanted if I would commit to this coven. And so, yeah, the promises of power and fame and money and all the drugs that I wanted, basically.
Yeah, it sounds like the Crossroads story, right?
Yeah.
Where you sell your soul to the devil.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So you
Yeah,
can
yeah, yeah.
play the guitar, right?
Yeah, yeah. And
The
so,
rock star.
and come to find out that the gal that I was with and the lady that was supplying the drugs on their own were making these packs together, basically wanting to become famous.
Dude.
And I was kind of like the guy that could get them there, because I had a lot of charisma. I was very good at
You still have
drums.
that, by the way.
lead guitarist, he was very charismatic. We had this charisma together. We just had this connection. We just knew where each other was going, and he would push me. He was good at pushing me, and I would just go to other levels in my drumming. I remember drumming one night so hard that my knuckles were bleeding from hitting cymbals, and the blood all over my drum set. Just he would push me and push me and push me, and somehow I liked it.
And you liked it. That's the cool thing, though, right? Like
somehow I liked it, but I'll never forget. Yeah, I still, we had such a chemistry together, and that was the word I was looking for.
you were good at it, right?
Yeah,
First,
yeah.
So that
yeah.
helps. Do you still play
I
the
still
drums?
play drums,
There?
actually, for our church. Yeah.
Well, the guitar's here, so you know. And I don't think there's anything possessing me as far as I'm aware. So let me know whenever you want to play.
We can give it a shot, man.
Sure, yeah.
I play guitar as well now.
Guitar too. Right. Cool.
Yeah, just a standard guitar, box guitar. But anyway,
Yeah, that's a cool story. So this was like a full blown, demonic cult.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you know if they're still around? Like, do they still
I don't.
exist?
No, he got killed.
Wow.
The guy that was trying to recruit us, he ended up getting killed.
Killed or sacrificed?
Yeah, somebody shot him.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, how do you even react to that, though? Well,
Yeah,
you did
yeah,
say,
yeah.
like, Snuff, right? And
Yeah,
he got his
yeah,
name from
yeah.
killing
Snuffy,
people in
yeah,
prison.
he was in prison. He killed people in prison. So
Okay.
anyway, so we deduced all those things, and we realized, okay, this is they're trying to recruit us. And I remember it was the third day. It was a morning. It was a Sunday morning. The church bells are ringing. For me, it's all significant because Jesus was in the grave for 3 days, and then he was rose from the dead on that third day. And Christians say it's Sunday, and so it was all that, and the bells are ringing outside. So anyway, I remember the lady asking me, she said, well, now that we know that this guy's of an Antichrist, and we know that they want us to follow them, will we follow them? And because this is a crazy thing, because we could read each other's minds, we thought they could read our minds and know what we were thinking and know what we were saying, and just crazy, because I was a part of this group of people that would do witchcraft on each other. They would speak curses and expect those curses to be carried out, and the person that spoke it or had it spoken over them would receive it. Actually, you would see them manifest what the other person was cursing, and we were in this big group, and it was crazy.
That's deep.
I never got involved with that part of it because I was like, nah, that's too far out for me.
Well, I think we have that here as well.
Yeah.
It's mostly gypsies doing
There's a lot of it
right?
here. There's a lot of it.
Right,
here.
right.
And I think that's why God brought me here.
Okay.
Because I'm familiar with that, and I can see that. And I'm always preaching against witchcraft. Especially, we have a big congregation, a lot of gypsies, and I'm always saying you cannot be a Christian and dabble in witchcraft. It's just not. It's not from God. And so anyway.
Well, and they have this reputation, right? As
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
I mean, they show up in movies.
It's
as
part
well.
of their culture.
Yeah, it is. Well, they're fortune tellers as well. Well, fortune tellers. Some of them maybe can on some level, but they're mostly just getting money, right?
Yeah.
And then the cursing thing.
Yeah.
And you still hear stories here as well.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I can't think of one.
I hear them all the
one
time.
You hear them all the time,
Yeah,
right?
I hear. Yeah.
Do you ever have to lift the curse or try to lift the curse?
I always break it in the name of Jesus. If they come to me and sometimes I'm just praying for them, and I just receive a revelation from the Holy Spirit that, hey, somebody spoke a curse against this person. So I just begin to break it in Jesus' name. The Bible says that cursed is he that was hung on a tree, and so Jesus took that curse. He took the curses when he hung on the tree.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
this is fascinating for me. It's not something I've completely been surrounded by, I suppose, growing up. Although, we have obviously Christianity's the predominant religion in our region as well. With Orthodox, Reformed, Catholic, Evangelic, the one I was raised as. But it's not the same as the evangelists and the evangelicals here, I suppose. But it was interesting, we were doing everything in German because it was the Transylvanian Saxons that had this religion.
Yeah.
And I know my grandma was evangelical as well, picked it up in Brasov. Then my mom and my brother and myself ended up being part of this religion as well. But I think I already mentioned this when we met. Like, they never took it all too seriously, I suppose, because the congregation wasn't too big. Most of the communities already left. So the Germans already left. They were in communism. Mostly went to Germany, right? Because, it just made sense to leave communism behind and just go to a developed country or a developing country, I suppose. And I suppose, we had to go through the confirmation thing, which you do in 8th grade. It's kind of, I think, like the age of 14, but it's the same, I think, with, like bar mitzvahs. And so you have this tradition, I suppose, everywhere around the world on some level where, boys turn into men. Come of age, I suppose. And we did that, but it was never taken too seriously. And even though I did commit at some point to reading the Bible as well, and it's not enough to read it because you kind of need a level of understanding to actually interpret what's in the Bible as well, because it's complex language, right? And it's old language. It's not the language you would hear today.
They have newer translations now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to look into that, but the original one is the original
King
Old
James,
Testament.
Yeah, the King James is thee, thou, and they sort of speak poetically.
Yeah, well, and
there's Old English that's sometimes hard to understand.
Yeah, but even though I'm Hungarian, I'd rather read it in English.
Yeah.
Somehow it's easier to interpret because having grown up on movies and video games, sort of picked most of the stuff up in English anyway. So this is just the Bible, but at that point I committed to also reading the Torah, the Talmud, the Quran as well, just trying to stay open to anything out there, because throughout the history of humanity there's been so many religions, and Christianity took quite a lot from paganism, I suppose, because Christians would call it paganism, right? Like the 25th of December or 24th, it being Christmas. It's pretty much the shortest day of the year, longest night. So it's
that's all true. That's all true. Right. And for me, as a disciple of Jesus Christ, I do take the scriptures literally, and so. Like I believe in 6-day creation rather than evolution. I really believe there was 6 literal days that God created the heavens and the earth. But I say that to say this, that for me, I try to honor the feast. That's what was set up in the Talmud in the Old Testament. Was the feast, which is Passover. Yeah, that's the spring feast, and then you have Pentecost, which is 50 days from that, and then you have the Feast of Tabernacles, which is the fall. And yes, I do partake in Christmas, but I don't recognize it as much as I do and honor those feast days.
Well, yeah, because it's sort of a marketing thing, right?
Yeah.
Santa and everything. Happened with Coca-Cola, kind of doing the thing, and it's a marketing. Like people buy stuff, buy presents, all that. So that's pretty much what Christmas has become over the years for modern Western society.
And if you have kids, they're going to whine and cry until you don't get them presents, and so unless you teach them another way.
Yeah, but I still think it's nice. And I grew up with that type of Christmas as well.
Christmas at the same time, even though it is paganized, and what it was that Constantine had changed those dates because after he wanted to Christianize the Roman Empire, he started taking those pagan holidays and Christianizing them, basically.
Yeah, because I think Christmas was Yule, right? Yuletide, I think, for the Vikings. Yeah. And that's kind of where they picked it up. And it represents the birth of Christ, right? But I don't think I remember it correctly, but is it like, was it in August sometime, the birthday of Jesus? Theoretically, supposedly.
It's possible. You have to try to do your research and find out. Yeah. But I don't think the shepherds would be out taking care of their flocks in the middle of winter.
Right.
And so, that's when the angels showed up and announced the birth of Christ. And so we're thinking somewhere in the spring, maybe Passover, maybe Pentecost, in that area.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this was also the Middle East, so it is warmer, even if it
but
was
it's still cold.
Winter. It's still cold.
It's still cold, and they're usually not out with their flocks during that time. They're usually in a stall or something.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Yeah, sorry, like I veered you off from the conversation. This is just like my take on.
So that's why that's what I say about being literal about the scriptures and trying to adhere to truth, and understanding that there is other religions and paganization of Christian festivals or whatever, and so anyway, I just try to stay as close to the truth as I can.
Yeah, and the way you see it, right, as well. So you've got your own moral compass.
The way I understand it from the scriptures, yes.
Okay, and
the teachings from Christ.
Yeah, and
so
we veered off again from like the main story.
So back to the story.
In your 20s.
So I was. It was that third day, and based on everything that we understood, we felt like that coven really wanted us, and that they knew if we wouldn't follow them, we thought we would be killed. Actually, wow. That was the truth. That was our truth at that moment, was that if we didn't follow the Antichrist, they got our number. They're going to take us out. This guy's name is Snuffy. I mean, that's what he's famous for, is killing people. And so she asked me the question, the lady I was with at the time, and she asked me the question. She said, well, will we follow the Antichrist now? And I just remember my mom reading the Bible and hearing too much about Jesus. And I said that out loud. I said, no, I think I know too much about Jesus to follow an Antichrist. And it was at that moment that the Holy Spirit came in. And that's all I can say, is that he just came at that moment and started leading us. We went outside. All we knew was that we got to go. Something's here to save us. Something's going to shift. Something's changing. Something's here to help us. And I don't know how do you explain following something that's invisible, but you have an impression you have to go. Yeah, you have to follow whatever this is.
Your instinct, I guess, right?
Exactly.
You're listening to your instinct.
And so we go outside, and the bells are ringing, and there's a church right across the street from where we're living, but that's not it. And we're following this presence, this spirit, whatever it was. It felt like a wind was carrying us. We ended up 2 kilometers across town.
You were just walking, like
just walking,
no destination in mind,
searching, not knowing where we were going, just searching, following whatever it was that was leading us. We ended up in this field that had been it had been plowed up, and because they'd grown potatoes there or something. So anyway, and so we're in this field, and I smoke a joint. I have friends driving by and say, "Man, you okay?" "Yeah, I'm just sitting here waiting on I don't know what, but I'm just chilling right here." And so we're sitting there, and across the street was this old rundown building. We didn't know what it was, but pretty soon a Cadillac pulls up to it, and this little black woman and black man get out of the Cadillac, and they're going into the building. And it turned out that it was an old Church of God in Christ building, but it was just dilapidated and falling apart. And he had been sent there from California to start a congregation there.
Okay.
And actually, I ended up being his first convert. But wow. So they come to us, and they asked, "Well, hey, you want to go to church?" And we're like, "No." And the lady I was with, she's like, "No, that's the devil. That's the devil." And I said, "Okay, no, thank you." Yeah. And so they do a little bit more, and they come back out and asked us again, and we said no. And they said, "We're going to bring church to you." And so they came and started praying for us, and my pastor started casting demons out of the lady I was with, and she was screaming, and as those demons were leaving, and my pastor's wife was holding her and rocking back and forth and screaming the blood of Jesus, and my pastor's praying in tongues. I'd never heard anything like that before, and
wow. And what an experience, though.
Yeah, it was crazy
to go through. Like, what did you think? And this is, you weren't high at this time, right? Like, this was
I smoked a joint. No, I wasn't on any meth. It had been 3 days. I was coming down, basically.
Still on a joint, like the paranoia you get from witnessing something like that.
Yeah, it was awe-inspiring. It was crazy, but but the power was there. I could feel the power. Okay. I could feel the power that was more powerful than the demonic realm. I could feel that whatever was taking place was more powerful than the demons that had been trying to possess me. Right. That's what I knew. And so I realized when he turned to me, he told me, the Lord said, "You need to quit drinking and doing drugs right now." And he said, basically, if you want to live. And then he said, do you want to receive Jesus Christ? And by that time, I'd seen too much to not. And I knew he was greater. So it's like in a moment, I saw that Jesus was more powerful than the devil and the demons. And just a revelation comes, okay, if Jesus is real, then heaven's real. If heaven's real, then hell's real. And at that moment, I realized I had a choice to make. And I chose Jesus. And here's the funny thing, good thing, beautiful thing, was that I was instantly delivered. Wow. Instantly. From drugs, from alcohol, from all those years. I went home and flushed down at least $1,000 worth of crank of crystal.
Wow.
And never looked back. And everybody thought I'd have to go to rehab.
Well, yeah,
because I was 23 years old, and I started at 16 every day. It's like I said, I was a full-fledged alcoholic drug addict by the time I was 20 years old.
Yeah, no
and
more.
now 3 years of crystal meth addiction, and so everybody thought I'd have to go to rehab, but I was delivered. I was totally changed.
Because even just if it was just alcohol, it's dangerous for an alcoholic to give up the stuff from one day to next, just because you can literally die.
I was totally changed.
Body's completely used to it, and you did it just instantly.
Instantly.
That is impressive.
Yeah. I mean, there was temptations along the way. My friends would come and try to bring marijuana, and they would come and want to party. And my lead guitarist, he was mad because I was like, dude, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Okay. You know, and so my lifestyle was changing immediately. Yeah. I knew something had taken place.
Yeah, wow.
But
you've changed for the better, right? I mean, this was the
way for the better.
Way for the better, and you started getting healthier as well.
Yes,
just physically.
Yes.
Have people mentioned that you're looking better as well? Maybe as opposed to.
Yeah. Well, they could tell I was different.
Okay.
And you know, it's so funny when you live in a little town. Everybody knows you.
Well, yeah.
You have a reputation. I had a bad reputation as that drug addict, alcoholic, as that whoremonger, fighter guy, you know, just always in fights or whatever, doing bad things. And so they thought I was crazy then because I was, you know, into the heavy metal. But then when I gave my life to Jesus, they really thought I was crazy.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Well,
they thought this guy's really gone off the rocker, you know?
Yeah. And, but young Delbert would have been a fun guy to hang out with.
Man,
I don't want
crazy.
to put it that way, but yeah, it's super impressive that you.
I'm
gave
still
up all
pretty
this stuff.
fun to hang out with.
Well, you are. We're here. We're chatting, but it's a cool story to have. And had you not had this experience or these experiences, this life experience, then you wouldn't be able to tell the story.
It's true.
Either. So you kind of needed to go through all that to kind of understand where you are now.
Yeah,
it's a weird way of putting it. You need to have the bad experience in order to appreciate the good.
Exactly. Well, Jesus said that he was ministering to a woman and she was a prostitute and she had been delivered of demons and the Pharisees, the religious people, were looking at Jesus because she was crying at his feet and wiping his feet with her hair because her tears had went on his feet and so they were judging him and he read their minds and he's like, look, if you've been forgiven much, you will love much. Those who have been forgiven of much will love much. That's my story, bro. Yeah, I was forgiven of so much. Dude, I wasn't only a drug addict, alcoholic. I was an adulterer. I slept with so many different women and did even other men's wives, just horrible stuff I'm not proud of.
Yeah, but
not proud of it all.
But it's part of your life.
But because of that, I know how much I've been forgiven. And that's why I love Jesus so much. It's because I know.
Hands down.
I know.
But hands down that you're still brave enough to admit it. To admit all this stuff, the things you've been through, and
you know,
kind of knowing that it's bad and having left it behind.
Yeah.
And, having gotten into this completely new lifestyle.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why in Christianese or Christian lingo, we call it born again. I was totally a new creature. I totally became a new person.
Yeah.
And what's so beautiful, Nimrod, is that I read the Bible, and I'd quit school in the 10th grade to go to work. But it came alive to me. I didn't have any problems reading the Bible. I read it and I saw my life. I'm like, this is me. This is what happened to me. This is who I am. I'm that sinner. I'm that guy. I did all those things. Jesus saved me. Jesus loved me. And here's the other thing, is that religious people used to look down at me because I was into heavy metal. I remember one time I was searching. I was up all night on speed, and I was searching for the spirit realm somehow.
Wow.
And I'd went to a church the next, I was only like 14 though, and I'd been up all night on speed, and I was just contemplating the things of life. I'm like, okay, what am I here for? What is life about? It was one of those nights I was totally alone, up on speed all night, just thinking, what is life all about? Why am I even here?
I think that's the age when people start asking these questions, right? That's why you have confirmation and bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
You're supposed to get some answers.
Exactly. But I went to a church the next morning, and I remember, they have these ushers chairs back in the back as you walk in the door, and I sat on one of those ushers chairs, and I propped it up, leaned back in it and propped it up on the wall, but nobody came to me. Nobody came to greet me, and everybody knew me.
Okay.
It's a small town.
Yeah.
And nobody came to say hello. Nobody said, hey, what are you doing here? Glad you're here. Nothing. So I walked away, and I'm like, well, this is not the answer. But then years down the road, I meet Jesus, and I'm like, okay, this is the answer. So the first thing I remember is how people looked down on me because I was the way that I was, and yet Jesus loved me anyway.
Yeah.
He loved me anyway. So my first thought was like, you see, Jesus loves me anyway, even though I was crazy and messed up. But
at the same time, and these were followers of Christ, right?
Yes.
People in the congregation. Yes. But they are not supposed to judge others theoretically, right?
Exactly.
And they were judging you for reasons. You were being a human.
Well, I was bad. I can understand.
Yeah. Well, even that's questionable. What does it mean?
They were probably shocked. They were probably just shocked. Like, I know this kid. What is he doing here? Yeah.
Or either that, or this is the way you interpreted it, or that they weren't judging. Yeah, they were just like, if you want to go to church,
that's true.
Go to church.
But in my mind, it felt judgmental.
Okay. But so you felt like they were judging you.
But maybe because I was judgmental.
Maybe,
I don't
but
know.
We're humans, right? I mean, and we do this type of stuff as well. We judge,
and that's why we need Jesus.
Yeah. Well, but I was going to ask this, like, how sure are you? Well, sure. This is a weird way of putting it. You felt Jesus' experience. It's not the right way of putting it. His presence. You felt Jesus' presence. But how sure are you that was Jesus and not simply a higher power? Simply because if it was someone, say from Eastern Asia or anywhere else where people weren't raised as Christians.
Well, the reason why is because it was when I said, no, I know too much about Jesus, that Spirit came in and began to lead me. And so, to me, He is God. I mean, He is the one that I called upon. It was His name. It was that name that I called upon that led me to where I am today.
Yeah. Plus, it was the Antichrist, right? Like the other cult that was trying to get you on board. Wow, that's an insane story in itself as well. And then you've changed. You've left this lifestyle behind, and you started following Jesus.
Yes.
Right. And then when did you meet your current wife?
I met her about a year after my salvation.
Okay.
And a year and a half later, we ended up getting married. And she's such a beautiful soul. She loves everybody. She has a gift of mercy, and it doesn't matter what you've done wrong. She will love you. And she will help you. She's the Mother Teresa of Romania. I mean,
because you guys moved here together, right?
Yeah.
Impressive. Yeah, because she was familiar with your past, right?
Yeah. Well, she saw me. Yeah, she saw me before Christ, and she knew. I even made fun of her before. She worked in a grocery store, and we would it was one of those convenience stores.
Yeah.
We would stop there before going to work and get gloves and snacks and stuff like that. And she was very sweet, very sweet. She was just, hello, how are you? And just very sweet. And I would walk out making fun and mocking her and say, hello, how are you? You know, just, and I ended up marrying her. It was so funny.
Yeah.
She's so
life is
beautiful
like
and
that,
sweet.
right?
Yeah. She's
Life is like that. So, this was, you were 24, 25 when you got married,
We
right?
got married at 25, yeah.
25. And how long were you still in Oklahoma before you came over to Romania?
Wow. We were there until 2015.
2015.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that was when I was in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Good times.
Hawaii's nice, huh?
Well, it's not the worst place in the world, right? Like I did say, like why are we looking for paradise?
Yeah.
It's already here on Earth.
Yeah, come on.
It does involve weed, though, which is
Yeah.
bad. It's not my best description of paradise, right? But the surfing part is nice. Plus, eternal sunshine. Minus the occasional thunderstorm, hurricane-ish type of weather.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a nice place.
Yeah.
But then the U.S. in itself is a beautiful country.
Yeah.
So it's impressive. It's impressive that you've left it behind because not a lot of people do that. Although hands down, like there are a lot of Americans, I think, that are leaving the U.S. behind for Europe and not necessarily Western Europe. So I've noticed this. It's mostly Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
It's not just Americans. It's also Western Europeans switching over.
Yeah.
Like, do you think there's like a particular reason behind that? Like,
no, for me, I was always interested in missions, in mission work.
okay.
We went to Mexico. Matter of fact, I thought I would have ended up in Mexico. I would go. My wife's parents gave us the money to go on our first mission trip.
Okay.
And we went to Mexico with Global Missions, and I fell in love. You know, we would go to impoverished sections of the country, and just preach and
so you've seen parts of Mexico that most Americans haven't, right?
yeah, there's poverty there as well. Although I will say this, I feel like some of the areas that we minister to with the gypsies are even worse than Mexico.
Yeah, I mean, I can vouch for that. Like,
Yeah.
still, it's a bad thing for me to say because again, I'm judging. Just saying that, but it's life experience.
Yeah, the poverty level. But there was a lot of poverty level.
Yeah.
And then I would do that every year. I worked with handicapped people for years, and I had a lawn care business as well. And so on the side, I would do that. But I would work with handicapped people. I was a house manager for 6 handicapped adults, and so. But every year, on my vacation, I would go on missions. I was working full time, and I was also a full time minister. Wow. And at one point, I was even going to college because that's part of my story. Is I went back to college.
Well, you finished school then, right?
Yeah. I went and got a GED. Went back to school, went to college, and took me 9 years, but I graduated with a bachelor's degree.
Congratulations.
And so anyway, but I would do all that, but every year I would take my vacation and go to Mexico, and we would run a campaign down there with a friend of mine that I went to school with.
And, when you go on these missions, that would be missionary work, right? You're trying to convert.
We would go and take food to people and preach and tell them about the love of Jesus and we would see miracles. We saw healings.
Wow.
Saw healings. Saw people free from demons delivered. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine, and it's things you're still doing, right? So these are things that you're still doing. I mean, having moved here, plus you're close to a hotspot right now, right next door, Ukraine. There's a war going on. Yeah,
actually, my colleague, the one that's responsible for getting me here, he's in Ukraine right now.
They saw one of his posts.
Yeah,
just because I met him earlier. I don't know if it's okay if we mention him.
Yeah,
it's Ronald, right?
Ronald Voltaus.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get him on here as well at some point as well.
Oh, he's interesting. You would enjoy that. You would have fun with him.
Yeah, I met him. I know he's got a dirt bike as well, and myself being a motorcycle rider. That's pretty much the way we met. Just one of these bars where you get food as well, and he was just checking out my bike. Yeah. And I noticed he was talking in English with Mike Franson. I think he was visiting.
Mike Franson,
from Florida. And we just ended up chatting for like an hour or so. That's where I met him.
Yeah.
And it was fun for me to find out that you guys are actually colleagues.
Yeah.
And still, I wasn't aware of your presence in this small town, which is supposedly it's got a population of 40,000 people, roughly around there.
Yeah.
But I think in practice, it's roughly around 30,000 maybe.
Okay.
Because a lot of people left for Western Europe, right, for economic reasons.
Yeah.
As well. But yeah, hats down for you guys. Like still going to Ukraine, taking food to people that are really in need right now.
Yeah. He went down to
Kherson.
I don't know if I say it right.
Well, yeah.
But they're bombing there, and that was that area where when they blew that dam that got flooded.
Yeah.
Oh, and he showed
the name of it. Yeah.
Showed some pictures of that, and there's and there was some bombing and stuff going on.
Yeah, would it be difficult for you to go over there as well? Just because do you have a Romanian citizenship as well? Have you picked one up? Or
I have a visa. I have a religious visa.
Okay, so that's mostly the reason why it would probably be difficult to actually leave Romania for east in this case, right?
Yeah, I can go visit Ukraine. I've been a couple of times to Ukraine.
Okay, was it pre-war or
during the war? Yeah.
During the war.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Just a few months ago.
Wow.
We were in Ukraine.
What is it like to see a place that's at war in real time?
We were in Odessa, and it's not so bad there. There are, they do bomb near Odessa, but not as bad as where Ronald's at right now. But it's surreal because you're there, you're shopping, and the electricity goes out. And they have every store has generators, or else you're shopping with your iPhone or whatever with your flashlight, and we were there, and the sirens are going off. It was a Sunday morning. We're getting ready to go to a church, and the sirens are going off, and everybody sort of gets quiet in the van, and it's like, oh, is this it? And then so it's a little bit surreal, but people keep going. That's the strange thing. Yeah. It's almost like they're used to it. You don't see anybody running or panicking. They just keep going on with their lives as we did. We just went on to church.
Because it is what it is, right?
It is what it is. If the bomb hits, it hits. We keep going until it does.
That is insane, though. But you're kind of increasing the probability of that happening if you are there, right?
True.
In a hotspot. Right?
True.
Because people are still afraid here, even though Romania is part of NATO, and you have to explain this to a lot of people. If bombs were to end up in Romania, then that's more or less the Third World War breaking out. So there's no need for people to be worried about that yet. But if you are in Ukraine, so if you're on that side of the border, there's good odds of a bomb landing to wherever you are. So again, heads down. And it's so weird, to hear about this, especially because you guys were in Odessa. So we were supposed to do a bachelor party there. It was roughly 3 years back, I guess. Mm-hmm. And the war's been going on for, 1.5 years?
Yeah.
I think we never went. I never went. The guys I was supposed to go with have. And fast forward 1 year later, and there's an actual war happening there, and people are fleeing for a good reason, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of Ukrainians that came over to Romania as well.
Yep. In the beginning, we had a lot come through our church. Actually, we had a couple. We had some families that stayed with us, and of course, Romania's economy is not so stable enough or good enough to sustain them, and so they would move on, like to Holland or Germany or Belgium.
Completely understandable. I don't blame them.
But we helped some people. We had some families. Actually, had a family with 6 kids, and I think there was 4 boys, and they almost burnt down our church. They got into the boiler room and found the things that make for fire, and anyway, they were just curious boys playing around.
Well, yeah, they're kids, but still.
Our maintenance guy caught it, but anyway.
Good thing, because I know where the church is, and it's in one of those spots where if fire were to break out, it wouldn't be.
They were such a cute family, though. I still loved them. They went on to Holland.
I bet. Yeah. Well, because of Ronald.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, so we have connections there.
And being Dutch. He was the reason why you moved to Romania as well.
Yes.
So you've been to Holland before coming to Romania, right?
Well, actually, no. I went to Holland after I met Ronald. After I came to visit Ronald, and I told him it was after my son was killed, and I came to visit. Ronald was actually at my son's funeral, but anyway, so I came to visit Ronald, and I'd been praying for Holland for years, and I said, man, I'd like to go visit Holland, and so I came That was 2011, and we went to Holland together for the first time.
Was that the time I think you mentioned that you didn't want to leave? Was that when the volcano happened in Iceland, or was that to Romania?
That was before. That was before. Yeah, that was in 2010. I'd bought tickets to come to Romania.
Right. Yeah.
And but I was too broken. My son was killed at the end of 2009, October, and I bought the tickets and was going to come, and my wife and my youngest daughter was with me, and anyway, I remember waking up one morning and saying, "God, I'm too broken. I can't go. I was just in too much of a grieving place," and so that was the year that the volcanoes erupted in Iceland, and I was able to get all my money back.
It's one of those, one of those weird coincidences that we call coincidence,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
You needed help from a higher power, and there you go. And you were in a bad place. You mentioned you were in a bad place financially at that point as well. And this is 2010, right?
We had money, though. We had money to come, actually. But I'd put out like $4,000 on tickets, and so that would be a big chunk to lose.
Yeah, sure.
So, but God gave that back to me.
This was also just after the financial crisis happened, right?
Yeah.
So 2008, right?
Yeah, 2009 there was a dip in the economy. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that still went on until 2010. Then it started to like stabilize and flip, but still, again, then $4,000 at that point was a
lot of money. Yeah. For me.
Well,
a lot of money.
For anyone.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it was amazing that God did that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And then you ended up in Holland, and this was 2011.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I went through a process that's an interesting process as well. As a minister, I became very upset. Let me start over. In the beginning, I was very angry at the devil, and so at my son's funeral, I chose to have a worship service, and because I wasn't going to let the devil have any sort of glory out of me losing my son, and so. But out of that, there was like 30 people that converted and gave their life to the Lord at my son's funeral. And so I knew all the right things to say. There's a story about Job in the scriptures, and Job lost all of his children, lost all of his livelihood, lost everything. And one of the things he said was, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And so I knew how to say all those things and going through the motions, and I wasn't going to let the devil have a victory over my life. But then after everything settled down, and there were so many things, Nimrod, so many things that God did during that period that was just overwhelmingly good to me. The money that came in to bury my son, we didn't owe anything. Everything came in. And extra money the saints of God gave, the Christians that loved us all gave. I was able to buy his widow a car and get her established, and just so many wonderful things that God did. But as time goes on, I start questioning.
Well, yeah.
God, could you have stopped this?
Yeah.
You're sovereign, right? Why did this happen to me? I've served you. I've been faithful. Why? And that's the worst thing you can do, is to question your source of life.
But we do that every day. I think,
yeah. And I just began to. I quit talking to him. Basically, I never stopped believing, but I quit talking to him. Yeah, and I became very depressed, just a dark cloud over my life.
This is the part that I'm also would like to go into, but at the same time I'm trying to avoid. I don't know how open you are about talking about it. Well, you've already mentioned it. So you started it off, and if you want to,
it's part of my story. It's part of my life.
Yeah, I don't know if do you want to go into details,
I can. Yeah.
How it all. I know you've already told me. If you want to share it with listeners as well, maybe how it went down. It was a detailed story when you mentioned it to me, and it left me speechless. Yeah, it's one of those things you don't even know how to react to it, because unless you experience it, you can't even imagine it.
Yeah,
you just try, and that's pretty much the way.
Yeah, well. Yeah, it was in 2009. My son was 23 years old. Excuse me, but And you mentioned the economy dipping there, and I was actually on staff at our church that I'm still connected with, and we had 5 full-time staff. Anyway, when the economy dipped, people stopped giving for a while, and so the finances of the church dropped, and I was the legal one, or the logical one, let me put it that way, the logical one to let go of out of all the staff, because we needed everyone else, the senior pastor, we needed our youth pastor, we needed our children's pastor, and so I was the associate pastor, and so I was the logical one to let go of with a big salary, and so that happened, and then a month later, I was preaching in California, and I'd come back and just was all excited about what God had done there. And that night, my son was supposed to come and see me, and he had just had a baby girl a few months earlier. She was only 6 months old, and he decided to stay with his friends that night, and they had some weapons, and they had been doing some target practice. And supposedly they had run out of ammunition, and that's why they were in the house. And so they were all in the house partying, and it was my son's house, and there was a song on the radio, and he didn't like it. He wanted to switch it, and the young man that had the gun, he said he'd been playing with his gun or whatever, so the young man said, "Don't change it. I want to hear this song." And my son, being my son, being like me, he said, well, this is my house. I'll do what I want. And so he reached down to turn the channel, and that young man pointed the gun at his head and pulled the trigger.
Wow.
And
that is it.
So I got the call at like 1 a.m. in the morning, and started just a whole horrible season of my life to walk through that. But
can't even imagine it, man. I'm so sorry to hear it.
Yeah. But
it's impressive that you can talk about it as well.
Yeah,
I'm sure it was difficult at first, right?
Oh, it's very difficult.
Even to tell the story.
Yeah.
I mean, at the same time, to talk about it, well, it's hard to talk about it, but people do encourage you to talk about it at the same time, I suppose, because you process it. Each time you say the story, you're processing it more and more. So I suppose there's a good side to it. Plus,
it's a part of healing. And just walking through the story. Yeah. So oftentimes, it helps people even that when I speak about what God brought me through. So the young man, they gave me a face-to-face with the young man that shot him, and what do you do when you're face-to-face with the man that killed your son? How do you respond? Well, for me, I just said, I just looked him in the eye and I said, "You took something very precious from me." And I said, "Well, you can never get that back." And I said, "But the only thing that you can do to even try to help is to promise me you will live for God and His honor." And he said he would. He promised me that day that he would live for God. Now, I haven't followed up on that, but I believed him that day, that he made that promise to me, that he would follow God and my son's honor. And you go through the court case. I had to go through the court case, Nimrod. It was so hard. And I felt in my heart that I had to forgive. And how do you do that? How do you forgive? How do you forgive somebody that took something so precious from you? My only namesake, my son, my only son. So
again, speechless, hearing this again is.
We get to the whole court case. You could see God in the whole thing as he was dealing with the whole situation. And anyway, that's another story. But we get down to the day of the sentencing of the young man. Okay. They're going to give him 20 years for second-degree murder.
Well, yeah.
And I remember I had to be there. I had to be there for the sentencing. The judge said, "You have to be there when we give him the sentence." And so I was there. And I remember when they said he's going to prison for 20 years at least. And I broke down crying, just sobbing. And I was, what am I crying for? I was sobbing. And all I could think of was that another young man's life was being taken.
Yeah.
And another father was losing a son. And I knew at that moment that I'd forgiven him. I was weeping for him. I was crying for him. And I was like, God, this is so hard. I didn't want it to happen. I didn't want it to happen. And even in the court, I was like, Judge, I don't think he did it on purpose. And somehow I still don't think that he did. And yet he had run and fled the scene. But he was the one that called 911.
Well, what do you do when that happens?
Exactly. He was just
you
afraid.
Panic. You panic. Like, you know that your life's changed from then.
But the fact that he said what he said, in everybody saw that was there at the party. He said, if you change that channel, I'm going to shoot you. And supposedly he thought the gun was empty, but anyway. But all that, I was able to forgive. I realized that God had helped me forgive this young man.
Yeah.
And that I knew that was a part of my healing that had to take place. I had to forgive him. And still I pray for him when I think about it. And at some point when I think if I'm strong enough, I will contact him.
Okay.
But just to see if he kept his promise.
So besides that, like, well, what did he tell you? Like when you met him,
he apologized.
He apologized. Okay.
He apologized. But what can you say? He couldn't look me in the eye.
Yeah, understandable.
I felt so horrible for his father.
Yeah, because you know that's someone's son as well.
Yeah.
What that parent has to go through as well at the same time.
And
he has to live with the thought that his son actually shot someone in the head. Oh, it's not even his someone, his friend, right?
Yeah, supposed,
supposed friend, yeah. Well, when people are drunk or partying,
do stupid stuff, and
people do stupid stuff.
That's what I came to understand. Trying to blame God or whatever, and God's like, that wasn't my fault. People make choices. We choose either to believe God or we choose not to. We choose to follow God or we choose to go our own path. We make choices. My son had made a choice not to come see me that night, and he was supposed to. And he even called me and said, Dad, I want to hang out with my friends tonight. I'm sorry.
Oh, man.
And that other young man made a choice to point that gun in his head and pull the trigger. It was choices. We make choices every day. God gave us free will and free choice. And he says, I've given you this. I've given you dominion over the earth. I've given you authority to take care of it, do with it what you want. But if you follow me, it'll be a blessing. I want you to take care of what I've given you. Yeah. And so we make those choices, and he gives us that free will, because in an adoption process, most of the time, you come together, the child being adopted and the parent that wants to adopt, they come together to get to know each other. And so the parent says, well, I choose you, but will you choose me? So the child is a part of that as well. Do you want to be my child? And so that in an adoption process, the child gets to choose, yes, I want you as my father. Yeah. God gives us that opportunity, and he gives it to us through Jesus. We can choose. The Bible says that Jesus was crucified at the foundation of the world, so that we could have the ability to choose God. God wanted to be chose. He wants us to choose him, and he gives us that free will to choose.
Yeah.
And so I knew that day that it wasn't God's fault. Yeah. I figured it out. Okay, it's not God's fault. It was choices that were made. And we make those, don't we? We choose to drink and drive. Yeah. People get killed. We choose to ignore what's going on in Ukraine, and people suffer. We make choices. We choose. Either we get up and do something, or we sit and watch TikTok.
But we call it free will, but we're influenced every day by external things.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you were to see just things about the war on TikTok, people wouldn't be watching TikTok anymore, right? Yeah. They're trying to avoid the negativity, I suppose, of it, and they think it's not going to happen to them, or they don't even think about it. Maybe they just try to live in their own bubble.
Yeah. We bury our heads in
and then we ignore whatever's happening over there, because it doesn't have anything to do with us.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the way we were before Ukraine happened as well. It's because the war in the Middle East was, well, ever since I was born, at least, there was always war there. Even before that, I think. Yeah. And we're not even aware of why there's war besides religious reasons, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
And economic reasons as well at the same time. But then there's Ukraine. And still, it's deep. I mentioned this on the last podcast as well. Because, my dad as well as my uncle, they're very rational guys. And then they follow the war as well, and they realize how bad it all is. And when I was there not too long ago, it was a few months back, we were talking about it, and he mentioned, when he went on a skiing trip as well, met someone from Ukraine. I think this was in Slovakia, if I'm not mistaken. And it was a lady, they were relatively well off financially, and they were going up with the ski lift, and, she told him her story of what happened back in Ukraine, all the people that they've lost, all the people that they knew, family members, all that. The men had to stay behind. And obviously she started weeping, just saying the story. So somebody actually had to go through that, experience all this. And on the same night when he told me this story, we were there just for a night. And, he offered if we should go to some central location of Budapest. And I agreed, and I'm familiar with the place, so I took him out to a nice karaoke bar, just to have a few drinks.
Yeah.
And this was central Budapest, so it's the place where you get a bunch of Brits, French, or foreigners in general, Western Europeans come into, do bachelor parties and all that. So you had to kind of be in this weird situation where that this is going on just a few hundred miles from where you are, and people they have no idea what's going on there, and they're just partying and enjoying life, and not even giving I don't want to use the term damn.
It's okay.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
So they're not even giving a damn about what's happening there, and just enjoying life.
Right.
So this was a weird thing to experience as well.
Yeah.
So we're in a limbo, I guess.
Very surreal.
Yeah, we're in a limbo as well. This is Eastern Europe. It's not like a rich country, rich region of Europe. So you're seeing, again, the Westerners quarreling about the weirdest things.
Yeah.
That you never even thought would be a thing ever. Mm-hmm. And on the other end, people are losing their lives, their homes, their family members. Whereas on the other side of Europe, people can't decide what gender they are. Mm-hmm. And it's a weird thing.
Yeah. It's a strange season, huh?
Yeah.
For me, though, all these things, according to my faith and beliefs, is that it is the agenda of the devil to destroy society. And you think about it, according to the scriptures, God instituted marriage and family. And the foundation of society is family. If you were the devil, how would you want to destroy society? Well, you destroy the family.
Yeah. And
you change the meaning of marriage. You change the meaning of sex and biological sex and
when did this become a thing?
Yeah.
And even if, let's say, you're not even a Christian, you're coming from a completely different religion. You can't deny that, like, Western Europe and the U.S. were built on Christian values.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's changing now, and obviously it's not doing it any good in the long run.
Why would you go after children? Why would you hit children at such a young age and take someone that's innocent and start asking them about their gender, asking them about sexual things? And why would you do that? It's so that you can brainwash and change the way people see family and see themselves and see life.
It's such a fragile age to be in. Even you mentioned, like, when you were 14, you had one of those evenings where you were thinking about the meaning of life.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And that's what kids do. They're vulnerable at that age, and they can be influenced by this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a weird propaganda.
They should be innocent.
They should be, right? Just live your life.
Exactly.
Because
let them explore and find out on their own, but don't shove it on them.
Yeah, because the whole gay thing, people have been gay before as well for the past 5,000 years. It doesn't mean that they have to go around flying a flag, and going about the whole rights thing and being represented here and there. Well, nowadays you can't watch anything on TV without,
You're canceled if you don't agree with them.
Well, you try. Well, But what are you left with then?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Because I grew up on Disney, and there was a case where they were talking in the boardroom, Disney board members, about having to have more representation of said community and all that. Do we need that? Like,
exactly.
Because we had, you grew up on Snow White and all this, innocent sort of stories, which in my mind are still sort of innocent, but you still have people saying, well, was it Snow White that was asleep?
Yeah.
And the prince came and kissed the princess, or Snow White in this situation, then she'd never consented to said kiss. And it's such a weird way of putting it. Like, it's a nice story, guys. Just let it be a nice story. And it got changed. Yeah. And this isn't during a time, again, it's weird. It's confusing. Yeah. There's people getting canceled, people representing a certain ideology getting canceled as well, mostly from the right in this case, from the way I see it from out here from the East, because I have no saying. I'm not going to vote in the U.S. I'm not a U.S. citizen, but it's something that I'm witnessing as well. Why are people on the right getting censored? Yeah. Why are certain stories portrayed the way they are by the left, by mainstream media? This is during a time when Christmas songs are getting canceled. There's the What was the song called? Baby It's Cold Outside. I think. Yeah. Again, it's an innocent song if you listen to it, like, baby, it's cold outside. Oh, but please stay. But baby, it's cold outside. I've seen
some of those comparisons where they play other songs,
and this was during a time when the number one song on the charts was
was
like
WAP.
Big, Fat, Wet, something. Yeah. So that's weird.
You can say it. I can't say it, but you can say it.
I'm not gonna. People can just look it up. Yeah. I'm pretty sure they already know what we're talking about. Yeah. So confusing times. But I'm veering off. I'm sorry. Like, I'm ranting about this stuff.
I enjoy it. You're so natural at this. You keep the conversation going and.
Yeah, well, it's the fun thing about a podcast as well, just because it's, again, a couple of people sitting down talking about all sorts of stuff, life experiences as well, positive, negative as well, political ideologies, and
you can explore. You can explore perspectives
as well, and it's a good way of listening. Well, I would have never met you probably. Yeah. Had I never had this podcast, maybe I would have went to your church and listened to what you would have preached. But I'm getting hands-on life experience from you, so this is kind of the best way of getting
interesting.
Yeah, so I'm enjoying the podcast thing a lot. I don't have anyone behind me. I don't have staff. I don't have somebody talking into my ear like what I'm supposed to grind you with or anything like that. I'm not an interviewer.
Yeah,
I'm a guy that likes to sit down with other people, and I'm super curious.
That's cool.
And you definitely have a heavy story. That you've shared.
I can even go further with that. Like I said, being a minister, I felt like I knew all the right things to say. I knew all the right religious quotes to make.
Oh, yeah.
But as time went on, that heaviness sets in, that depression sets in, that dark cloud. That's why I couldn't come to Romania. I knew I was too broken. But there was one morning that I was supposed to preach. I hadn't been talking to God because I was upset and just depressed and blaming him and had an attitude with him. And so I remember I had a nice house in America. I sold it all to come here. Wow. I had a nice 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-car garage, brick home.
The American dream.
Yeah, so I'm saying I had walk-in closet. That was where my wife prayed in the morning. So she's in there getting ready. And I'm sitting in my bed drinking a cup of coffee, just so heavy, couldn't get out of bed, and just thinking, I don't want to preach this morning, thinking it inside. And finally I said it out loud. I said, I don't want to preach this morning. My wife was like, what? I don't want to preach this morning. But it was at that moment, Nimrod, that I had a revelation from God, and I heard his voice, and he said this, you're being selfish. He said, that boy is with me, and he's fine. And he said, besides, he never was yours. He's always been mine.
Wow.
God said he was his. And I don't know how to explain how revelation does that. As you change instantly, your perspective changes. And at that moment, I understood, okay. I understand now.
Yeah.
I understand He's with
Your
you.
sons with-
And God was saying in that, but in that moment I realized I was afraid. I was afraid if I lost my son, then I could lose my wife. I could lose my 2 daughters. I could lose everything. And in fact, I could. But in that moment when God said that my son was His, I understood, oh, my wife is yours. Oh, my daughters are yours. I'm raising my daughters for you to marry other men of God, to be able to procreate the race and make you a family. And my wife belongs to you, and she's an individual. You gave her to me. You let me share my life with this beautiful woman. And so at that moment, that set me free from that fear.
Yeah.
Okay, I trust you. Yeah. And there is an afterlife. There is life beyond what I know and what I can see right now. And I've known that, but just at that moment it became so real. And so that's when that shifted. It shifted and I knew that I needed to come back to God. And I knew that I had failed as a minister by turning against God, turning away from Him, basically.
You were being human, I think.
Yeah. But at the same time, as a minister, you're like, how can you be so irrational and silly? And anyway, so I knew that I had to rebuild my relationship.
Yeah.
And so God gave me confessions to come back into His presence. I'm a man of God. I spend time with Him every day. I know Him. I hear His voice. I pray to Him. I read His Word, and He speaks to me out of His Word. And so, but I hadn't been speaking to Him. And so in order to come back in my mind and soul, I had to make these confessions. Number one, Jesus is Lord. No matter who's dying, no matter what's going on in the world, nothing takes His lordship. He died for the sins of the world. That's number one. Number two, His blood never fails. The Bible says that the blood gives me entrance to the throne of God. It's through through the blood that He shed on the cross that I was able to get to God in the first place. Right. And so the Bible says it never fails to give me entrance to the throne of grace. And then it never fails to cleanse me, never fails to wash away my sins. The Bible says He's faithful and just to forgive those who confess their sins and say, God, please forgive me. And so that was the second one. The blood never fails. And number three, I had lost my confidence in God, that He wouldn't hear my prayers because I'd failed. I didn't think He would hear my prayers. And so number three was that faith always works. My belief in His shed blood and in His lordship always moves Him, always pleases Him, it always works in prayer. Faith is how we come to God. Faith is how we speak to God. Faith, belief, trust.
Well, you need to have faith in something.
Yes.
People need that, and it's
Dude,
something
we're going
to
to put it somewhere.
Yeah, I mean,
we either have faith in our own abilities. I say this, men have a God-shaped hoe. We're going to worship something.
Yeah.
Whether we know it or not, we're either going to worship ourselves, we're going to worship.
That's a very good way of putting it.
We're going to worship society. We're going to worship politics. We're going to worship something, money.
Exactly.
We're going to worship something. And so for me, I want to worship Jesus. I want to worship God the Father. And the only way I can do that and have right standing with Him is through Jesus, His Son.
Hands down.
And so that's what I put my faith in.
But it's such a difficult journey, and you felt vulnerable that morning as well, knowing that vulnerable. You can,
And that morning, I went to church. I didn't preach. I told them what I'd been through. I told them I didn't want to preach that morning.
And that was probably better than actually preaching. There
wasn't a dry eye in the house. Everybody was weeping.
Yeah, I mean, understandably, it was
one of those mornings, but
because it was a deeper story than whatever you could have told your congregation at that point.
But then my relationship with God became so just even more infinitely stronger, and I realized that He had been there the whole time, and He was so loving and so patient and so kind and so gentle with me, even being angry with Him. My anger didn't bother Him a bit.
I think it's normal. Again, it's being human. It's part of human nature.
But if you think about it, who am I to be angry with God? Who am I to question God? And because He is God, He is holy, He is almighty. He is, in my faith and belief, He is almighty.
Like you're thinking about the big picture.
Yeah.
That's the important bit. You know that life is temporary. And what you mentioned as well, I don't want to give myself off as I have this infinite wisdom or something. This is just the way I see the world as well.
Yeah.
It's just the way I'm interpreting it. You felt vulnerable. You know that at someday you will lose your wife. Someday your daughters, life will end. Life is temporary.
Yeah.
And it's something I had to experience as well relatively recently. Just 1.5 years ago, I lost my mom as well. It was a super difficult time.
Yeah.
But it's a natural part of life. And I think that's the unnatural part that you had to go through was that you had to bury your son, which is insanely more difficult.
Yeah.
But death is a part of life.
It is.
Once you were born, if you were born and you are alive, you're will die. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah.
So you might as well use the time you're alive to do something relatively good, whatever that may be, and wherever your moral compass leads you, whether that's for religion or... We live in a society where believing in God is somehow seen as a weakness, somewhat, or for someone to admit that they believe in God as a weakness, or they're part of a religious group as well. My case, I believe in a higher power, definitely. I wouldn't call it maybe Jesus, or I don't necessarily call it God either. I just know, I feel, I have these moments in life as well, and I think most people do. You have those moments that we call coincidences, that there's just too many things happening in a weird way, and falling in the right place or the wrong place as well, just to say that it was a coincidence. You know that something had to be involved as well. And I think we spoke about this as well the first time, like whatever has happened and will happen, we call fate as well. And it may already have happened on some level. We're just reliving it on some level. I think we were talking about deja vu at that point, right? Yeah. And I've experienced it as well. And it's interesting because as a kid, I used to experience it all the time, but not really as an adult. And it's a weird thing. I've experienced it the day when my mom passed away as well. And I tried to explain it like, maybe the brain chemistry, your brain releases some hormones where you experience this thing. But the only way I can put it, this was the way it was supposed to happen. I had to experience this as much as, my mom had to go through whatever she went through as well. And a lot of people go through things that are way worse as well. Yeah. And it's life. It's this life experience. So from my perspective, I mean, religion, Christianity puts it in a way. There's heaven and hell, right? And there's purgatory for the Catholics. I see life as this sort of purgatory as well. I don't call it purgatory, but it's a form of in prison, jail. I don't really want to call it that either. It's something, you have some mission in life. You have some purpose. You got to do something. There's a reason you are here. And I have to believe in an afterlife as well. And it's not the way most religions portray the afterlife to be either. Because it's not like, you go on a paradise and then you have, some religions would say you have 72 virgins. Another one would say like you go to, where everything's perfect and you never feel pain. But well, we don't know. There's no way of knowing. The only way to know that is, or when you find that out is when you die. Yeah. And I don't think the human brain was ever designed to understand what happens after we die. We try to explain it and portray it to others as well, but I don't think we can comprehend it. Because we live in a world where we have touch, we have smell, we have taste. We're limited in terms of how many things we can feel and the way we can see the world. We have the so-called 3 dimensions as well, and time being the 4th, right? Yeah. Because it is.
Yeah, it helps me to understand that when I spoke about, I believe God's original intention was to colonize the earth. And he created us with a body, and he gave us his spirit. And the Bible says that when God breathed into man for the first time, he became a living soul. And so for me, you're looking at a body, but I know that that's not really who I am. Who I am is who's speaking to you. Who I am is this person on the inside, my spirit, and what you can feel. And as I'm trying to articulate my heart to you, that's who I am. Yeah, and at some point, this body goes back to the earth from which it was created from, and the spirit goes back to God from which it was created from. And so we become a part of the energy and the atmosphere of heaven and God.
Yeah, this is what religion says as well. You know, your soul goes back to be with God at the end of the day, right? So that one higher power. Yeah. Same. I feel like I have to believe it because of the fact that whatever this is, where we are, this exists, and I am looking out of my head right now, whatever I call my ego, myself, me being me. It's such a weird experience that I exist. Yeah. What were the odds of that happening?
Exactly.
Right? But here I am. I exist, and I have a name, right? I'm Nimrod. You're Delbert, but that's words that our parents named us. But at the end of the day, we're just beings with a body, and people experience life differently. Some people experience relatively mundane lives. Some people go through, having to experience war, having to experience, like, can you imagine what life was, say, maybe 1,000 years ago? Mm-hmm. People butchering each other was normal thing. Yeah. Whether it was for, conquering or just for the fun of.
I think that's what sin does. And we speak about, when sin entered in because of the rebellion, because of the original sin, that's when our brain started deteriorating. That's when understanding starts to deteriorate. And for me, and everything makes so much sense to be explained by Scripture and understanding of God and His creation and what He created us for. And I think I even do a teaching called Vision, Identity, Purpose, and Authority. Vision is having the right understand or the right perspective of who God is, because some people see God as this old man that's ready to knock you down if you get anywhere out of line of what He said to do or whatever, or they don't know what He is, or they think that He's not involved in our lives or whatever. But I know that He's a Father. God is love, and love never fails. If I could never preach a word to you, I could minister to you with a hug or a handshake or a good a word.
Sometimes that makes a huge
affirmation.
Difference.
Love never fails. You can always minister with love. But to get back to understanding who God is, when we forget who He is, we don't know who we are. My identity comes out of knowing who God is and knowing that I'm His son, and knowing that I'm saved, that He gave His son, that I could be a part of His family. That's what the Bible says, that for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him will not perish but have eternal life with Him. That's His desire. He wanted to adopt us, and He did it through His Son. And so that works into identity. If I know who God is, then I know who I am. Can I tell you something? I believe this is what's wrong with America. America was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. Yep. They have lost their perspective of God. They've lost their identity. America doesn't know who she is anymore.
Yeah,
she's lost who she is. She's lost her identity. Yeah. So if you know God and you know your identity, then you understand your purpose. My purpose is to help people. My purpose is to love people. My purpose is to lead people to the Lord and help them to understand His love. And so understanding God properly gives me identity. I know who I am. Knowing who I am gives me purpose. I understand my purpose because of my identity. Once I know my purpose, then I can walk in the authority of that. If I know I'm a policeman, I can walk in that authority. If I know that I am a preacher of the Word of God, then I can walk in that authority and preach the Word with authority if I know who I am as a son of God. And so that's what I try to say, is that the proper perspective helps us to understand why things are the way they are.
Yeah. This is a very good way of putting it.
Yeah.
But it's so weird in the U.S. at the same time. I mean,
it is.
Because you still have people that are religious as well.
It's not the America that I know.
Well, yeah, it changed a lot. Even
in politics and in just how they're so confused. And I say that again because in the beginning, just 20 years ago, America knew God and said, in God we trust. It's on our money. It's and we had the 10 Commandments, but we started taking the 10 Commandments out. We took prayer out of school. We lost that vision and understanding of who God is. We lost our identity. We're not that America anymore. And I think now we're searching for identity. Who are we as a people? Who are we as a country?
And people are turning towards a weird ideology
They
as
want
well.
to go into it's socialism, communism, whatever you want to call it. I think there's a lot of people pushing for that.
Yeah, well, one shape or form.
In politics.
Yeah, and it's a weird thing because the flag that is used that's supposed to represent disadvantaged community, and we're talking about the LGBTQ flag, in this case, rainbow flag. Just walking down Regent Street in London, it reminds you of, well, if you're into history and you look, you've watched documentaries from the past, then it looks like Berlin did in, say, 1935, 1936, when Hitler was supposedly still good, right?
Yeah,
and the Nazi ideology was still seen as a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I have the year right, but it's pretty much the same vibe that you get walking down Regent Street. Flags that are hanging on the side of the street. And it's one of those things, if you're not with us, you're against us type of deal. And you get canceled and say the wrong stuff, you get labeled. And you will lose your job as well.
Exactly.
You know, say the wrong thing and you'll get fired and maybe you'll never find a job again. So your career could end simply because you say the wrong thing.
Yeah. It shows you how easy it is to control and brainwash people.
Oh, yeah. Because it is.
Yeah.
It is. And people do fall for it. And it's this weird thing where there's only two camps in the U.S. There's no middle. Yeah. You can't just be like, you're not an extremist because they keep using this term. Like you're either a right-wing extremist or a left-wing extremist, right? You're one of these rainbow people. Because some of the things the leftists say, from my angle, obviously I'm center right-leaning, but from anyone in the left, I'd be considered a Nazi or a Hitlerist or whatever. But you can't just say like, look, I agree with some of the stuff on this side and I agree with some of the stuff from that side as well. And, you know, there can be a third option as well. Because
there has to be some sort of solid ground, though. There has to be a foundation.
Well, yeah.
There has to be a foundation. And that's why I come back to the family. If we don't have that family foundation, then anything goes and everything's confusing. Are you woman? Are you gay? Are you not gay?
And it's such a weird.
And you're crazy if what we call normal, if you like women, if a man likes women, that's weird. Or that's so
nowadays that's weird.
So confusing.
Why is this thing we're on Netflix? I'm sorry, on Netflix. Why is the bad guy nowadays? Why does it have to be a straight white guy?
Exactly.
It's so weird.
And so they're the same things the things that they accuse the right of on the left. It's exactly the same towards them. They're saying the same things. Yeah. We don't accept you. We don't accept your beliefs, your faith.
Because you're white.
Yeah.
You can't have a say on whatever we're doing. Or if you're talking about abortion, you know, you can't give your opinion because you're a straight white guy. Well, and I'm one of those guys that I'm not giving an opinion on that because I'm a guy and I don't have to live with the experience of getting pregnant.
And this is why I love the story of Christianity, of Christ. Because he loved everybody. He died for the world. You know, Nimrod, this is what, I preach this a lot. God's not mad at the world. How do I know this?
Okay.
He loved the world. He put all of his hatred and anger against sin on his son at the cross. He dumped it all right there. And then he says, now if you believe in what my son did for you, we're good. It's all you got to do. It's how you can come back into my presence, how you can come into right standing. God's not mad at the world. He's not. He's not angry with the world. He gave a simple solution through his son, Jesus. And the only thing that upsets him is when we poo-poo on that. And so, but so the story of love God loves the world. God loves us. And that helps me because if God is love, he tells me that I have to be like him. So I have to love you.
Yeah.
I was raised in a black church. I don't see color. I don't.
That's a weird term to use, like that you don't see color. You do see it. It exists, but it's not like a determining factor of
I see the
of your
person.
life. Yeah, you see a person.
I see
Whether
a
they're
person.
black,
That's it.
white, whatever.
Exactly.
It doesn't really matter.
I see the person.
Yeah. And it should be like that.
And it's so funny. I have mixed marriages in my family. My niece is married to a man, just a powerful, handsome, fine, upstanding young black man.
Nice.
And he is my son. He even calls me dad. And
Cool.
and I don't say that to boast. I just say that that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Exactly. Especially in a country like the US,
Yeah.
where you have a lot of, well, there's all sorts of races, right? And if you want to define them by race.
Exactly, yeah.
Because most of, or a lot of people are already mixed. You can't even call them white or black.
Yeah.
Even most of the blacks aren't exactly black. Like
Yeah.
they're not sub-Saharan
Yeah,
blacks. They're mixed.
Yeah.
You know, they're brown, I guess. Or there's Asians as well. And there can be white Asians as well. And it's not a US thing. You can have, maybe white people in Japan.
Yeah.
And it's still normal, I think.
Or Hungarians and Romanians.
You can have Hungarians in Romania. Yeah, we exist. Here we are. But in terms of race, we're still white. The religion is more or less the same. So the differences
now
aren't.
We're talking about skin pigment, yeah.
Yeah, because, it makes it easier because if the color would be different, the color of our skin would be different, then that would be a determining factor as well.
Yeah.
It is with gypsies.
Yeah.
Here as well, because they are darker toned and they are going to be seen as different people because of the color of their skin. So even here, some form of racism exists, but it's not because of the color of the skin. That's just like, it's so difficult to kind of define this thing. People had experiences or they've heard stories. People getting robbed. Myself, having grown up, I've been pickpocketed a bunch of times. My lunch money got stolen as a kid. It was always by gypsies.
Yeah.
Do I look at them differently? I know that statistically, yes, there's a higher number of gypsies committing these types of crimes, but we still work a lot with them. I still see them every day and, life goes on. And I don't hate them because they are gypsies, but it's simply because of the fact that we're talking about this in the UK or the US, you'd already be seen as a racist. Simply for bringing up the topic, for talking about it. And nowadays, just getting labeled is enough. It's not like people try to reason with you or try to rationalize, whatever their views are. They just call you something, and with that, that's kind of a conclusion. But they don't argue, and that's kind of the difficult thing. Like I remember having a similar argument back in London with a girl, and she walked out. She literally just walked out of my house. We had a common friend, that brought her over, and we got into an argument, which was, from my perspective, a relatively constructive argument. But because she couldn't argue back, she just decided to get up and leave.
Yeah.
So, and I think this is something mostly what the left does in the U.S. as well. Instead of sitting down to have a discussion,
or else they scream in your
face. Just silence whoever has a different opinion than what we have. And the other weird thing about the rainbow ideology is, we should take a break, by the way.
I'm okay.
But my behind hurts as well. Like these seats are not comfortable. These chairs are not comfortable. Let's take a 5-minute break, maybe.
Okay.
Till a break. Thanks.
If you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're back then.
Yeah.
Where were we, by the way?
Where were we?
I think we're still talking about the rainbow.
Yeah, that was the last I remember.
Yeah. Same. But and I did mention during the break that I wanted to bring up the fact that one of the, I don't know if this relates to pre-break conversation, but it relates to it somewhat. That I felt fairly unsafe when I was in the U.S. Occasionally. It wasn't like a constant thing or anything. I just had some experiences, and I'll go into that in a bit. And it was the simple knowledge of anyone being able to own a weapon. Whoever you wanted to quarrel with, an argument with, could have been road rage or anything.
Yeah.
I tried to avoid as much of it as I could.
Yeah.
You always had the thought in your mind that you know, you can just get shot.
Yeah.
So, and obviously you've had the negative experience as well with guns, but you did mention that people say guns don't kill people, it's people that kill people, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Guns make it easier, definitely, because they're
Yeah.
there, and it doesn't take a lot to set someone off.
But if somebody wants to kill you, they'll take a knife or a bat, or they'll find a way to kill you.
Well, yeah, if they consciously are trying to kill you,
Yeah.
and they ponder about it, then they will.
Yeah.
But there are those moments when you get super angry
Yeah.
on the spot where you know you would regret it later.
Yeah. That is a consequence, but at the same time, as I told you, I very much support our constitutional right to bear arms, and I say that because it wasn't to be in America, having a gun was a way to support yourself. It was a way to protect your family. It was a way
Right.
to hunt and get the food that you needed.
Yeah.
And then when government came in, it was so that you could. The right to bear arms was so not against people, but against governments, against tyrannies, because
Well,
we
yeah.
were breaking away from England.
Yes.
We were breaking away from a tyrannical government.
So you can defend yourself.
And so that's why it was written into our Constitution that we would always be able to bear arms, even if our own government turns against us.
Yeah.
And so that's I tell you, that's why we have not been so
And we lost electricity.
power.
Well, that's an interesting experience that I've never had before here.
Back on. Yeah, we got a power cut. So.
Yeah. Strange, huh?
Yeah, I've never experienced that, but
Yeah.
it's Eastern Europe, so it's something that,
First time for everything, though, right?
well, during a podcast, yeah, because otherwise we have a lot of them. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially since the war happened, right? Like, and the energy thing became an issue, right?
Right.
The embargoes on Russia, and
Yeah.
getting cheap
Yeah.
oil and gas. So yeah, we get the occasional power cut, and we've experienced it now, and we're still hoping that the sound has been saved.
Yes.
And we'll
Yes.
find out, I suppose, later on.
Yes.
Right to bear arms. That's
Right
where
to
we're-
bear arms. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
for because we were breaking away from England. That's why they
Mm.
wrote it into our Constitution to defend against governments, not against people per se, but it is a right to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think that that's why we have not been totally invaded by other countries, is because everybody knows all Americans have guns.
Yeah. Yep.
And
It's a good way of putting it.
yeah.
And I definitely agree with it, and I'm a fan of that. 99% of the time, or maybe 99.9% of the time, but there's the 0 point something percent. The knowledge of anyone being able to
Yeah.
bear arms, walk into Walmart and buy a gun
Yeah.
is creepy, because there's weird people out there,
Yeah.
dodgy ones. And, we've had an experience which turned out to be positive at the end of the day. As I was doing Route 66 with a couple of friends, I think this was in Missouri. We stopped at a campsite, set up camp. We had a tent that we got from a family friend, which turned out to be small and smelt as well, because it was probably wet and it was wrapped up as it
Right.
was. So we couldn't really use that. I decided to sleep in the car, and our neighbor, that was a complete redneck fella, a super nice redneck fella, it turned out later on, lent us a tent. So the girls
Awesome.
ended up sleeping in the tent. And I ended up sitting up quite late with the redneck dude,
Yeah.
who was there with a girl as well. And,
Yeah.
girl was doing something else, and we were just chatting by the fire. And, I kind of told him our story as well, what we were doing, and that we were just doing Route 66. And he was somewhat surprised. So he did come off as the brainwashed redneck person, thinking that anybody coming over from wherever the world wants to move to the U.S. I had to help him understand that no, like in our situation, these guys are still back in university. I have my company back in Europe, so we're here. We're doing Route 66. We're having fun, and then we're heading home.
Yeah.
And he just couldn't comprehend the idea. We're like, why are you going away? Like, this is the U.S., the land that are free and all that. But again, ended up being a super nice guy. But I did have a couple of moments there where I thought, like, he could just kill me at any point because he thinks that I'm an immigrant or something. Like, it's a weird thought, and when you think about it in hindsight, it comes off as a super weird thing. So I was paranoid, but again, turned out to be a super nice guy and gave us the tent altogether. So he lent it to us. It was a big tent as well, and we could take it with us for the rest of the trip. So it was super nice of him.
Yeah.
This was one of those experiences. Sorry, so just compared to Jamaica, where we were in Kingston, Central, it didn't feel safe. Don't get me wrong, but knowing that people there didn't bear guns helps. You can get stabbed easily.
Yeah,
well, you can get stabbed in London just walking down the road because why not? It's one of those places.
Yeah,
but the guns always freak me out.
Yeah, they're nothing to play with.
Well, definitely.
They should be taken very serious, and what really the rule of law should work as well. And if you have law-abiding citizens, it is the corrupt, it is the lawbreakers or those that shouldn't have a gun anyway. But here's the thing: if our government takes away the guns from the good people, then the bad people will have guns.
Yeah, because
they get them illegally as well.
Exactly.
And there's a market, there's a black market there for them, and so
there's enough supply.
Out
there as well. So it's not something that you can change right now. So I didn't want to.
It's not.
It's not something that I want to say that people should stop being able to bear arms in the U.S. or anything like that. It's something I agree with.
I think there's something in Americans' DNA that we're suspicious of governments. We're but
you still have.
There's a rebellion there because.
But there's still an odd government. Right now, leading the country.
Yeah.
It's
But if we didn't have guns, we would already probably be changed in a different country altogether.
Could be.
Maybe, I don't know.
But I shouldn't be telling you this because you live here, right? Yeah. You decided to leave the U.S. behind, obviously for different reasons. It's not like you weren't happy there or something. But the president right now is.
I was raised with guns, and actually as I remember as early as 9-10 years old going hunting with a .22, and it was just the way I was raised. I would go hunting for rabbit and squirrel.
That's proper self-sustainability.
Yeah.
You can catch your own prey.
And as I grew older, even though I was working in the oil field, me and my brother, we would still hunt. We would go hunting for rabbit and quail and dove. And
are you still doing that here? Maybe
I don't get to do it here. No.
Do you want to do it?
I would enjoy it. I mean, I enjoy hunting. My brothers, they still go deer hunting in the winter, and
I can put you in touch with some hunting clubs here. There's an arms depot just down the road. As well. And you can bear arms here as well.
Yeah.
If you are part of a hunting,
go through the proper channels.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And a lot of people own guns here. They just keep really quiet about it unless they have to use it.
But my wife and I. My wife was really against having guns in the home because of our children.
Okay.
And so I didn't see such a need after I came to Christ. I didn't see such a need to have a gun. A couple of times I had a gun that I kept very safe, but after a while I just no, I don't need a gun. I just choose to have faith in God and to love people regardless.
Yeah, and hope for the best, right?
Exactly.
Hope that you don't get attacked.
Yes.
Because there is this thought of you need to defend yourself in case you get someone breaking in.
Yeah.
And we have this thought as well here. But then in the US, you have people that take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Where they have bunkers and everything. So, and we have that here, but it's not as televised as in the US because I guess guys in the US do a really good job at it, and they set up proper bunkers, man, with swimming pools and everything. Okay, that's the exaggerated part, and it's for the rich. But going back to the gun stuff. It's a weird thing. Again, it's something that I find weird. Having grown up in Eastern Europe, it was never really a thing. Guns were never a thing. But having watched a bunch of movies, again, 70s, 80s, with all sorts of stuff. I don't want to give specific examples right now, because people can judge you simply because of that. They'll call you a redneck simply because of the movie that you like.
You have good arguments on both sides of the gun issue, and I say that because, but but so many Americans equate our rights to bear arms as almost like our inalienable rights. That if we start allowing the government to take that right away, where will they stop?
Yeah.
And so that's why we guard that one right so closely.
The right way to do it, I think, because the government. Well,
once you start chipping away at our rights, then how far will it go?
The very good example is pandemic.
Yeah,
there you go. Because the governments have had not just the government, but other governments globally and regionally as well.
That was crazy, huh?
It was a crazy time. It was a crazy time to be alive, definitely, and to experience it as well. You weren't allowed to leave your home.
Yeah, I was so aggravated during that period. Some people were happy. Some people were happy to just be shut down and resting or whatever, and I understand that.
For the first couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Or first month, let's say.
Yeah.
But then after a year, you were like, okay, this is getting, not a year, a bit earlier. This is getting a bit like, just for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. That was the thing.
Yeah.
It was never like that. Plus, then you got the whole vaccine situation, which is again a controversial thing because they're done by companies that are for profit as well. So it's in their interest, to have sales, and here we are.
Yeah,
the whole pandemic ended from one day to the next. When the war happened.
Yeah, Putin stopped the pandemic.
Stopped the pandemic. Who would have thought? Suddenly, everything got lifted. Everything.
Yeah. It was so difficult to travel. I was going back and forth to America during that time, and because I didn't want to take the vaccine, you'd always have to go through the hoops. You'd have to, get the test before you flew, and and all those sort of things, and you could even miss flights if you couldn't get it in time or whatever. And
was that like before the vaccine even happened?
It was as it was coming out.
As it was coming out. Okay, because I think you still need a vaccine. If I was to travel now to the U.S. and it's 2023,
they dropped it.
They dropped it?
Yeah, just recently in May.
Recently. Good to know. Well, I am vaccinated, so no.
Well,
So
I held
qualify.
out. I held out. So
you avoided it somehow.
Yeah.
You've managed to. Well, I would have loved to, but it's one of those situations where I got pressured into doing it as well.
Yeah.
So it wasn't because
exactly.
It wasn't because I necessarily wanted it to. I thought I'm relatively young, physically not in the worst condition that there are people that are in worse conditions out there. I wasn't healthy either, so I was still chubby and I still had to do sport. So, but I would have preferred the government tell me to go outside, get in shape. Don't close the gyms. Rather go to the gyms, get in shape, get your vitamin D, and make sure that your immune system can stand up to whatever you get attacked by, whether that's corona or whatever else. And then if you're someone who's kind of what's the right word? Why am I forgetting that? Vulnerable. There we go. If you're a vulnerable person, whether you're, got other secondary illnesses or anything, then probably better. It's safer to get vaccinated. But then to vaccinate everyone, all the healthy people as well, including the children who, statistically were doing very well, so to say.
What kind of weird science is that, huh?
It's like a Black Mirror episode. So, and I think it was even. Are you familiar with Black Mirror?
Yes.
It was on Netflix. They have a new season, by the way.
Do they?
Yeah, we just watched last couple of episodes weren't all that good, but the first 3 or 4 of the 6.
Some of those things seem so prophetic, like some of the AI stuff that was on Black Mirror. It's like, dude, it's happening now.
I'm gonna have to rewatch some of those episodes.
Yeah.
With the AI stuff, because we're kind of living that as well.
We are,
but we were going through it with the pandemic, so that's kind of why the Black Mirror guy said we're gonna stop for a while because it's happening in real life with the pandemic. And it wasn't the pandemic; everything was blamed with the pandemic, but it was the governments that were shutting you down.
Exactly,
you couldn't operate your business; you had to stay in your house. Police being outside,
so unfair.
It was
because some businesses just died and didn't come back. Some people lost everything. I feel sorry for those people.
Such a weird thing. And myself, working in finance, it's a weird thing because I expected a financial crisis to hit earlier, but it's one of these social experiments that never really happened in the past since modern capitalism happened. That everything got shut down globally, all the economies, boom. Everything got shut. And then a lot more money got pumped into the system as well. COVID relief plan or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
1,000-something page documents where I remember that a bunch of it had to do with infrastructure and nothing to do with the pandemic. But it got more money into the system, ergo giving a bunch of jobs as well to a lot of people. So on paper, the economy looked great after the pandemic.
Yeah.
And the current administration didn't do a horrible job, so to say, at portraying Biden as being the best president in the history of the United States for creating all these jobs. Now, obviously, it wasn't them creating these jobs. These are the old jobs coming back. They have created jobs as well. They have created. I'm not going to deny it because
play on words, huh?
Yeah, it is. And it's such a weird way of putting it because some people actually bought it. So because
gaslighting.
Yeah,
that's a new word that we used.
Yeah. I'm familiar with the term as well.
Yeah.
But the odd thing is that everything still is looking good, economically speaking, in the U.S. on paper, statistically. Unemployment rate is at historical lows. Hasn't been this good since 1969.
And it's all a bunch of BS.
It's a bunch of bullshit because and at that point, and I got into gold, by the way. I wanted to ride gold as much as I could because I was expecting this economic crisis to happen, similar to what was in 2007, 2008. All along in 2021, the Fed was saying that inflation is transitory and it's going to go away. And they're not going to touch interest rates at that point. I was like, okay, not touching interest rates, then gold should be going up because there is inflation out there and there's no way for inflation not to happen if you're going to pump a bunch of money into the system. Then they said, it's a bit worse than we expected, so we are going to have to touch interest rates. And supposedly they only could raise interest rates by 0.25%. Instead, they went for 0.75 repeatedly. And I think it was this June, the first time when they actually stopped raising interest rates, saying that they're slowing down. Now that they're taming inflation, they got to a point similar, and this was Jerome Powell, so I'm quoting him. So similar to the way when you're slowing down with a car. Okay, so now we're going to slow from 0.75, we get to 0.5, 0.25, then we're stopping, then we're going to raise another 0.25 because the economy can still take it. So again, unemployment I think was at 3.7% at the last non-farm payroll, which was, I don't remember, it's always the first Friday of the next month. So we got the last one, first Friday of June, we got it for May, and we're going to get the numbers for June on the first Friday of July. And I never trust these numbers. It's hard to trust them. It's like, we got to a point where 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4 anymore. Exactly. You can't have high interest rates and a super performing economy. Something's not right at some point. So I think it'll slingshot into a bad recession at some point. And I've been saying this for a while, and still it hasn't happened.
Well, there's also you see the changes coming. You see them trying to push for the changes, for the one world government, for the Great Reset. You got your Charles Schwabs. And why does that guy
You will own nothing and you will be happy.
Why does that guy wear those weird outfits?
Like Darth Vader, right? So or it wasn't Darth Vader, but one of those bad guys.
Like from something out of a science fiction movie or something.
Yeah, he's wearing the robe. World Economic Forum, that's the guy. Where you have all these rich people meeting and talking about the fate of the world and deciding on the fate of the world as well.
And who elected them? I mean,
nobody,
who put them in charge?
Yeah, and it's not even like in the U.S. where theoretically you elect your leaders.
Exactly.
So in the EU, we just have
self-proclaimed world economic leaders.
There you go. So I've never voted for any of these guys.
Exactly.
Supposedly the system works like I'm voting for the guys that are supposed to vote for those guys, but
when I saw a TikTok and they were putting those suits on and they look just like you said, Darth Vader outfits or whatever. It's like, this is some sort of weird religion, man. It's just so crazy.
It is. Well, Bohemian Grove, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That turned out to be true. Alex Jones predicted it.
It's crazy, huh?
So it was a conspiracy theory, but it turned out to be true as well. How many conspiracy theories out there out there that
and then I saw so many of the presidents that I loved and adored. Wow. You know, it's like, really, Reagan was there?
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Ron,
this is crazy.
Well, Ronald, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the presidents supposedly are leading the country, but I think Joe Biden is really portraying the fact that it's not like that.
I don't think Joe Biden's leading anything.
He's not. He's just existing at the end of the day. Because he even admits it, saying like, if I'm going to say too much, I'm going to get in trouble.
Exactly,
like,
exactly.
Like,
I feel sorry for the guy. He makes so many faux pas with his speeches and falling off his bicycle. Dude, go to a rest home and just enjoy your life.
Have you seen the one with Don Lemon?
Huh.
The guy that got canned from CNN.
Yeah. I'm familiar with Don Lemon, but I don't know which one you're speaking about.
If we had the TV on, I'd show you right now, but it's the one where might have seen it on TikTok or somewhere. It's Biden asking Don Lemon, so you got the vaccine? Are you okay, man?
Yeah.
I mean, the kids. Our kids. You know, if people wanted to know if there's aliens or men that have been to the moon or something, what the hell is this guy talking
what are you
about?
saying, man?
And then Don Lemon is just sitting there, just watching, like as if this would be like a proper statement that he's trying to put out.
He did a good acting job.
Oh God! And we're seeing it, like, and not just us, like the whole world is seeing this guy, supposedly the leader of the most powerful army in the world,
and they're saying that he's doing so well.
Yeah,
all the medias, all
mainstream,
the mainstream medias are just saying, he's just the best thing. He's such a family guy. He's this and
yeah. And meanwhile, he's falling off the stairs. Yes. He's falling off bicycles. He's falling off. Oh yeah, I think one was the last fall he had was graduation ceremony. I think it was.
I think it was West Point or something like that.
And I know Trump went out there and shook the hands of all the guys, all the cadets.
Yeah.
So I'm biased, obviously, because I still think I have a Facebook comment from like 2011 where I was like, Donald Trump for president, but I didn't think it would actually happen in 2016. It was just something like I imagined it. It was my first weird experience as well, 2016, pre-election. It was the time where everybody said Hillary was going to win the election. And I told a couple of friends, like, I'm just genuinely curious. I keep using the term genuinely curious because I am genuinely curious. At that point, I was curious, what would the world be like if Donald Trump were to be elected president?
Yeah.
I got so many bad labels that day. Jesus. Why? Because I'm an Islamophobe, a racist, something, and I'm such a bad person. I'm like, no, I'm a thinking person that is trying to consider all possibilities, right? Because that's pretty much what I'm doing. Like, even at that point, I thought like Hillary was going to be president because everybody portrayed this future. Yeah. Like there's no way that Donald Trump's going to be president. But if he were to be president, what would the world be like? Would there be more wars? How would the economy take it? Because again, working in finance, that was what I was looking at. How would the stock market take it? So it was a weird time. And then Trump ended up being president.
And he did a good job.
And I think, and again, working in finance, he's done a good job. Like economically, the U.S. has performed super well during that time. And now it's performing super well on paper as well. But I have my explanation as to why it's performing the way it is, even though it shouldn't.
Yeah.
And the stuff I've said before.
Yeah, it's just propped up on paperwork and lies.
Yeah, this is my take on the U.S. and the current government that's leading the U.S. as well. But you've moved to Romania, so
yes,
so you're not there anymore. How are you finding it here? Like, how are you finding Transylvania?
I love Romania. I love Transylvania.
Glad to hear that.
I love the people. I love the geography, the mountains, and all the variety of landscapes that you have here. Love the roses.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you live in, well, I don't want to mention it on a podcast for anyone to know, but close to where we have a rose plantation as well. So they smell nice in June, right?
And it's such a lovely smell,
Yeah, and we got a lot of guys you mentioned that are working out on the fields that are in the congregation as well.
Some of them go to our church,
That's good. And you're doing this with a translator, right? So
Yes.
How are you finding this language barrier, like with the locals?
I wished I was better. I can understand, and my wife, she does good at speaking, and she can understand quite a bit. So we can sort of carry a conversation with people, but man, I have such a thick draw. It just does not work. I try to speak it, and
You
it
think?
sounds so bad.
Nah, I don't think. I'd be curious to hear it, but
Yeah.
maybe you don't want to do it in a microphone.
No.
We'll see later on.
But it's the Romanian language is difficult for me. But
It's
I've been here 7
because-
years, and I haven't conquered it at all.
Well, I guess because a lot of locals speak English as well.
Exactly. And yeah, they do. And I'm so bad. I'm so lazy.
Nah.
The first thing I do is say, "Do you speak English?"
Well, because most people do. Right?
Exactly.
Just mostly
Yeah.
the guys that are in your congregation, most of them don't, obviously, because they haven't really been exposed to English, I guess.
They understand it quite a bit now, though. But we like to have a translation.
Makes
Yeah.
things easier, definitely.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I
But
haven't
we
been
have a
to your-
good translator.
That helps. I haven't watched any of your ceremony. It's not the right word, right?
Yes, service.
Service. I haven't
Yeah.
watched any of the services because I know you post them on Facebook.
Yeah.
But in favor of doing this podcast, I didn't want to listen to it because I would have found
Yeah.
out a bit more about you, and I kind of wanted to do this first.
Yeah.
And I'll go back and listen to a couple of
Yeah,
this stuff that
yeah.
you've posted as well.
It's good. We just came out of a conference 2 weeks ago. It was Ronald has a team in an organization called Roar Conferences,
Okay.
and so we just hosted a Roar conference.
And what was it like? What did you do?
Well, it is. We come in on a Friday, and we have a Friday night service, and pump in a lot of worship and music, and
Okay.
and then,
Yeah, because I saw
and then
that
we
you
have
do music. As
breakout teachings during the day on Saturday, and we have snacks and meals, and we usually end up on Sunday morning. Was
Okay.
the last service, but a
well. So
lot
it's kind
of
of
people.
like a 3-day thing.
Yeah, we invite people from all over this area. They come from Cluj
Okay.
in different areas.
So are the guys in your congregation mostly locals, like in Region or
Yeah.
surroundings as well?
Yeah, we're all local,
Local.
but we're connected with Cluj. There's a Bible school in Cluj.
Okay.
It's a Christ for the Nations Bible school. So we're very connected with Cluj. We're connected with Vox Church, and Pastor Alex. I don't know his last name, or I can't pronounce it. But
I'm not familiar with him. So.
yeah, he's a nice guy, man. He's on TikTok a lot. I'll try
Okay.
to send you a link or
Sure.
something because he's very outreaching, and he's very natural on TikTok. He does a lot of TikTok shorts and speaking on Facebook, and he just recently he did an outreach, and there was a guy that was into Satanism. He actually has
Wow.
tattooed under his neck property of Satan or something like that, just something
Dude.
with Satan on it. But anyway, and or no, Satan is Lord. That's what it is.
Satan is Lord. No.
And and he came from India or from Sri Lanka, I think it was. And anyway, so Pastor Alex led him to the Lord and freed him from demons and all sorts of things. And he was at our conference. This young man was.
Interesting. Here in Region?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Would be nice to get one of those guys on the show as well.
Yeah.
Just hear their story.
Oh, yeah.
You have to be in an interesting situation to actually get that tattoo on your neck.
Exactly, yeah.
And then change your mind. But that's the okay thing as well, for people to be able to change their minds.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing. But I don't want to go down a different rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Just to kind of sum it up. Considering one of our earlier topics about being canceled and all that. Just let people do mistakes. Let people believe in different things. Not believe in different things. Have a different perspective. And if you want to change their minds. Don't cancel them. Don't shut them up. Let them speak whatever they're speaking and correct them if you think that they're wrong. But,
Our philosophy, or let me put it this way, my goal is to present love through Christ.
Okay. It worked
and
with this guy.
And hopefully that then they have the choice. And I don't hate them either way. If they choose not to believe, that's okay. I still love you. Christ still loves you. And so So you can't shove it. It has to be a choice. God, you can't force anybody to believe anything they don't want to believe.
Just to clarify, like, I'm not saying that you're doing this. I'm saying that the left is doing this, like the rainbow flag guys are mostly doing this canceling thing.
Yeah.
And you're presenting your situation, and people can, have their questions as well, and you're explaining your perspective to them, but you're not shutting them up. And
exactly
same as you're doing with me, you're letting me explain my belief as well. Well, if I want to call it a belief.
Yeah.
So still, in my case, again, I don't call my higher power Jesus, or I don't put a particular religion behind it. It's just like I know that there's a higher power up there that's influencing me, and whenever I die, I'll probably go back to whatever back is. There's no space probably there. Yeah. It's like there's no physical space. It's, again, I think whatever happens after a human dies is not something a human brain can comprehend on what happens afterwards. It's probably not something with the so-called 3 dimensions, with time as well. Because, again, and I always have this thought, simply because life exists. This world exists that we're in right now, and we can have this conversation.
Yeah.
There's too much intelligent design. And there's evolution's part of it as well, because
and to share our different perspectives is awesome, I think, because we can explore and for me, I'm convinced of what I believe, and that's okay.
Perfect.
But people talk about aliens. My perspective is those are demons or angels, because they are of another dimension. I do believe in aliens, but I see them as either demons or they are angels.
So wouldn't you believe that God created the universe, rather, and that there may be other intelligent beings out there also possible. Created by God?
That's very possible.
Which could be humans as well, that, somehow ended up in a different place. But obviously they're going to develop differently because of a different environment. Yeah. Different oxygen level, different gravity, different temperature. And we would call them aliens, obviously, because they're completely different.
Yeah.
But then
there's no real evidence of it.
Well, no. But
no real evidence of everything.
Yeah, there you go. So. That's even deeper. But at the same time, the odds are so high of some other form of life. I'm not saying necessarily intelligent life living out there.
I don't write it off. It's just my perspective. It's what I believe.
Okay. Because we could be talking about bacteria even. Because that could be considered as life as well.
Well, I think, just in my perspective and how it helps me to see things, I know that there's a kingdom of God that is in another dimension, that he dwells somewhere. And I believe it's the third heaven. I understand it from the scriptures to be the third heaven. And there's a whole kingdom there. And that's why I say that my belief is that God wanted to colonize the earth with his kingdom. That's why we pray, your kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Yeah, I believe there's a kingdom of heaven. And
I hope you're right.
There's a different dimension and a different life there.
I definitely hope you're right.
And
and I hope a lot of people are open and will accept it as well. Yeah. The way you're seeing it, because faith is super important. In most cases, it's more important than medicine as well. Yeah. It's been proven scientifically as well. Placebo works as well when it comes to medication. But then a country like Romania would, faith is more important. There are a lot of Orthodox believers, worshipers here, and a lot of them get healed from all sorts of ailments that you'd never think are curable.
Yeah. It's interesting, even my perspective or take on faith. Faith can move mountains. And
good way of putting it.
I think faith and belief, if we understand it and can harness it and express it, what does that look like? And I think that even I think your mind can heal you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's faith, because faith starts in your heart first. But if you can get it in your mind, and you can think yourself into healing.
That's a very good way of putting it as well.
Yeah.
It's also important because when you are extremely vulnerable, when you're in a bad state, even then your immune system gets compromised as well.
Yeah.
So it's the scientific explanation, I suppose, of this as well. If you believe, whatever situation you are in, but if you have faith in something, doesn't necessarily have to do with Christianity in our case, because it's something that you can't really influence if you are born on the other side of the planet where the predominant religion is something else. Still believing in said higher power, whatever they are believing in, can heal them.
Witchcraft works because of faith.
As well, yeah. Well, being cursed works because
if you believe that curse will affect you, if you believe in that person's curse against you, it can affect you.
Yeah. I've had.
If you believe what that person just said to you, it can affect you.
What if they curse you without you knowing them cursing you?
Yeah, well, for me, I don't think that works so much.
You never know.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's quite. Yeah, I don't know. I think that it does as well, because I know there are Satanists and witches that have actually been paid to curse other people, and those people died or something. So I know that faith somehow operates in that and works. But I also know my faith in Christ protects me. That's my faith. That's my belief.
Yeah.
That I'm covered by the blood of Jesus, that those curses can't touch me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting question then. Do you believe in ghosts, maybe? That are left behind for some reason here? Souls that have been left behind because of a trauma. Whatever there is, there are so many stories out there, and it's one of those things where you want to believe.
In the Christian realm, we would say that is a demonic being.
Okay, so
that operates because of a trauma. That there are portals that are opened because of some horrific, traumatic happening. Like, say, people were murdered in a house. Yeah. A demon's always attracted to sin and to evil and to that sort of thing that they can haunt. And we also call those familiar spirits. There's so much that I could really teach on in the area of even giftings that I believe come from God. I believe that God gives us gifts like the prophetic. He gives us gifts to be able to work with money. He gives us gifts to administrate, and all those are in Romans chapter 12. But I know this, I call them the redemptive gifts. It's it's the things that we're created with and born with. There's a prophetic, there's a teacher, there's an administrator, there's a ruler, there is a server. People that serve, they end up in hospitals and doctors, and so all these things are listed in Romans chapter 12. And I say that because if it's not given over to God, it can be used for evil. But God gave us those gifts. It's the way He created us. Just like your gift with numbers and money, that can be used for good or it can be used for evil. My gift, I have a prophetic gifting where sometimes God will give me words about people, and I can speak them out, and they will say, well, how did you know that? Well, it came from the Spirit of God. But here, that's how psychics operate. It's a gift from God. They hear things out of the spirit realm, but they haven't given it over to God, and so they use it for money. They use it to influence people.
Yeah, there's that as well. That was going to be my other question as well, if you believe maybe in psychics as well.
Yeah, of course.
There's a bunch of them out there that are obviously fake and they're doing it for money as well.
Yep.
And they probably give the real ones a bad name.
Yep.
There
are people that can predict the future. They hear things. But if God, well, there's plenty of scriptures that warn us not to take those things given to us by God and use them to influence or read the future, or tell people their future. God wants to do that with people. He doesn't want you doing that. there's something there that we tap into that if it's not used for good, there's another scripture, 1 Corinthians, I believe it is, chapter 12 or 14, where it says that prophecy is given for edification and building up, for comfort, for exhortation. And so if it goes beyond that, like you do have some people that even in the Christian realm that will come and say, God told me you're going to die in such and such and such, or tells something evil, and you can use that for bad, but that's not what God intended for that. He wants to comfort people. He wants to exhort them. He wants to build them up. Yeah. And so, so
very good way of putting it, by the way.
Yeah.
And you're super charismatic, by the way you're explaining it as well.
That's a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down, bro.
Yeah, but I don't want to keep you for too long. At the same time, you've already given me a lot of your time, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, man, I enjoy visiting with you. You're such an interesting guy.
Thank you.
I like to explore those thoughts.
It's one of my most interesting conversations I've had since I've started this podcast. And I'd really love to have you back here as well later on. Maybe bring Ronald in as well.
I will talk with Ronald.
Perfect. I'll make some more space here. And
that will be fun. He's so fun.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have a really good conversation as well. Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing your story, your really personal one as well.
Thanks for having me.
I definitely loved hearing your side of the, your story as well, and your beliefs. And it'll definitely make me pick up a Bible and read into it. Just kind of not be ignorant about it. Just I don't want to argue, whatever I can without knowing as much as I can about, the Bible in this situation.
I love that you're open.
And want to be.
You research and you look into things, and I also like it that you just don't believe everything that comes down the pike as well.
I have to filter it, and I need to be unbiased as well. I'm trying to be
But we're all on that search for truth, huh?
Well, we are. We're just cruising through life at the end of the day. The way I see it. So, we have our missions, but we've been given a life. Yeah. And I'm not trying to push my beliefs because that backfired on me before as well. Not necessarily, not religiously speaking, but I have my opinions, and again, people walked out on me from my own house simply for having my own views, which I don't find to be extremist in any way or shape or form. Yeah. It's just, a different perspective, and I respect anyone's perspective as well. Not the extremely extreme ones. Obviously, if someone comes out and says all Jews should die, or all Hungarians or Romanians should die, or any of that stuff, I'm just saying, okay, that's a bit extreme. Yeah. But I'm trying to stay as human as possible and listen to my moral compass. Yeah. And you're helping me with that. Thank you very much for taking part. Delbert, hope to continue this conversation at some point. Yeah. Cheers.
Would love to.
Take care.
Maybe I'll bring my guitar next time.
We'll have to do one of those as well.
Yeah.
We'll do that as well.
All right.
Take care.